Hello, I am Bentham and welcome to Factorio SPACE AGE. I've been lucky enough to have early access to this for the past 6 weeks, and in that time I have played an obscene amount of this DLC. I am addicted. It's a problem. Send help. It is, in my opinion, everything that we've been hoping for. If you've been following all the Factorio Friday facts, then you know roughly what to expect, and it's all as cool as it looks. I'm going to show you around the base that I have been building, because it's... because I haven't made any other content, and it's all I have the time left to do. Normally you would start a base tour with the base planet Nauvis, but the thing is that my Nauvis has been so completely changed by all of the other planets that I've been to that I think, if anything, we should look at it last. There's just a couple things that I want to show you about my Nauvis, and then we're going to start visiting space and the other planets and showing you everything that I've been doing there. Now, the eagle-eyed of you may have immediately noticed, this is not the Power Armor Mark II. This is a secret they've been keeping from you the whole time. There is a new tier of armor, and it is the mech armor. And of course, my mech armor is legendary. We can get into all the quality stuff later. This thing is massive. Huge capacity for equipment. Better in every way. And also, by the way, it flies. This thing can fly. You can fly over buildings, you can fly over water. It makes late game traveling incredibly easy. You can just fly over the top of absolutely everything in your mech suit. You don't have to worry about things being in the way. You basically unlock ultimate squeak through once you get to this level of the game. It's fantastic. And as you can hear, we have some rockets launching. So we can go take a look at these. So obviously, rocket launches were a thing in the base game, but now it's a completely different situation. No longer are we launching satellites. We are launching stuff. We are launching things. Our space platforms are requesting items which are being loaded into these rockets and launched up to space to supply those platforms. Basically now, a rocket silo is a provider chest, but on the surface it requests. So when something in orbit has a request, it will be sent down to the planet. A rocket silo will then fulfill that order by requesting the item into itself and then provide it into space by launching it. That's a good way to think of it. It's like a logistics system, but between surfaces and space platforms. And you're gonna need a lot of them. I keep building more and more rocket silos to maintain the supply rate up to orbit, because as my interplanetary empire grows, I need more and more logistics, more and more things sent up from here to go to all of the other worlds. Now, let's take a look at space. And here we are on the space map. And by the way, this is going to be something of a whistle-stop tour. Future Bentham here. I lied. It's nearly 3 hours long. If you want a more in-depth tour, then if you're watching this on the day of release, it's quite likely that I'm currently streaming over on Twitch, where I'm going to be doing a much more detailed tour of everything, and actually working on the factory and that kind of thing, answering questions. This is just going to be a quick run-through of everything, just to show off all the cool stuff in brief. So here we are on the space map, and here is our beautiful starting planet of Nauvis, where everything begins. And the space map is a good way to explain both the overall progression of the game and also the different kind of tiers of space platform before we get into taking a look at those. So, in my view, there's basically 4 tiers of space platform, 4 tiers of danger that a space platform needs to face. The first one is Orbit of Nauvis. So in Orbit of Nauvis, it's very tranquil. There's a couple little rocks flying around, but they're tiny things. You can grab them and use them for resources, but if they crash into you, they just go to pieces. They just smash into dust, and you don't have to worry about it. It doesn't do any damage. So you can build platforms in Orbit of Nauvis without having any defenses whatsoever. They will be totally fine. It's a good place to workshop new designs and prepare new platforms that are going to then go out and do missions in more dangerous areas of space. Next up, we have the middle 3 planets: Vulcanus, Gleba, and Fulgora. So these are the 3 planets that you can do in any order. Each planet, you're able to just start from scratch if you arrive there, and you can master each planet one by one in whatever order you feel like before you progress further. It is designed to work that way. And these planets are connected with space routes. Each space route between Nauvis and the first 3 planets, and between each of them, is the same length. Even though they look a bit different, it's artistic interpretation. And in all these cases, all these space routes, and in orbit of each of these planets, you have to deal with medium asteroids. These are actually dangerous. If they hit you, they will cause damage, and when you're traveling, there'll be a lot of them, and you'll need gun turrets to deal with those. So now you will need ships that are able to actually, shoot down turrets in order to be safe, either to travel or to safely sit in orbit of any of these worlds. So you can build something in Nauvis that can deal with asteroids and then send it out to the other worlds to begin your first explorations into the other worlds. I also love the features of this map, the fact that it shows little arrows for all of the platforms that are currently in motion, and when you mouse over them you get some extra information, and you can also mouse over these little pause symbols to see that there are ships currently in orbit of your planets and see which ones they are. We've got one coming in from way far out there. We'll get to that in a moment. So that's the sort of the second tier. Then we get to the third tier, which is paths to Aquilo. So these space routes are twice as long, so it's going to be, you're going to have to be able to survive longer duration journeys out to Aquilo, and you're also going to be encountering large asteroids. Large asteroids can be taken out by gun turrets, but it's not very effective. What you want to use is rocket launching turrets, and they can take them out with relative ease. They break them down into mediums, the gun turrets shoot them, they break down into smalls, and then you can grab them and use them for resources. So you have to build something a little bit tougher if you want to be able to get out to Aquilo, and that's the planet that follows these 3. Once you have mastered all 3 of these is when you want to be heading to Aquilo. I think you could do it sooner, but it's probably a bad idea. In fact, you can't do it sooner, I think, because of technology. You wouldn't want to anyway. It's a bad idea. You want to master the 3 intermediate ones before you head to Aquilo, the difficult one. But there is more beyond that. From Aquilo, you can head to the solar system edge, and this is where you're going to need the 4th tier of space platform. On this route, you're going to be encountering huge asteroids, and they will need to be dealt with using railguns. Also, this route is more than 3 times the length of the routes to get to Aquilo. So you need to travel a very long distance to get to the solar system edge. And if and when you do, in one piece, or at least, there is one piece of you that makes it, that is how you complete the game. That is how you get the end screen. But of course, it would not be Factorio unless the ending was simply the beginning of a whole new, level of the game, where you start to automate the process of doing the thing that previously you did to beat the game. Because there is one more location. The Shattered Planet. This has been a secret till very, very recently, even for the playtesters. This is the final location. You're not meant to actually get to it, because here's the thing. It's a shattered planet. There is no planet. It shattered. But this is the explanation for why there are so many asteroids in the system, why you can fly through and grab resources just out of space. It is because right on the edge of this star system, a planet, at some point in the past, exploded violently and spread rocks all over the system. The route to the core of the shattered planet is, I believe that's 40 times the distance from Aquilo to the solar system edge. You're not meant to get there, but once you begin the journey, you will start to encounter a special material known as Promethium, which can be used to do endgame research. And the further in you go, the more there is. And once you've collected enough, you can turn back and take it home for processing. It's meant, I think, really, that you're not physically supposed to be able to get to the actual center. And if you do, there's nothing there. But of course, people have found a way. You can build very slow, very overgunned ships that can slowly chug their way out there and make it to the center. And there's nothing there, so, don't get your hopes up about some secret hidden planet with a whole new set of mechanics. That is Aquilo. Aquilo is the final world that you will be exploring, and from there, it's just making your platforms as good as possible. But of course, you can then bring the signs home and do some more endgame signs with it. So of course, they've made sure that beating the game is not just the end. There is plenty more to do, and that's why I've continued playing it. I've beaten the game, but I'm just now I've now automated the process of sending out ships to gather Promethium and bring it back to Nauvis. So now that we've gone through the space routes and how that all works, let's take a look at some space platforms. So, all of my space platforms follow a consistent naming convention that I just kind of randomly decided to do, and so this one is Gaia. This one is a space platform without thrusters. It is tied to Nauvis, it was built in Nauvis and it's never moved. It is entirely dedicated towards making space science packs, which are now made using the various materials that you can acquire in space. We have little grabber arms that are grabbing rocks that happen to drift close enough. They're being crushed in asteroid crushers, and then the resulting materials are being used to make the science packs, and then they're shipped down to the surface. They go into the hub here. We have a bunch of storage in the hub, and then down on the surface we have a landing pad which is requesting science packs, and so this ship will send them as they are required, and off they go into the labs. It's generally a good idea to have your first platform just be a fixed platform that just stays in Nauvis orbit and chugs away making space science. Then you don't have to worry about it. Every now and then you might have to come along and upgrade it and expand it, but you'll be unlocking new technologies as you do to help you make it more effective. It's also interesting that you now unlock space science with blue science, so you only need red, green, and blue to start doing space science and doing space platform things. There's even an achievement for using the science packs of another planet before unlocking purple and yellow science packs. And by the way, before you end up, wasting a run, it's before you research the science packs. Don't research them at all. You can't just like research them and then not use them. You have to not research them. A couple of people I think have fallen afoul of that. Read the achievements carefully to make sure you do them right. Our next platform that I made is Hephaestus. This is my plucky little ship that could. This is the first one that I built that has a thruster. I called it Hephaestus because it was going to take me to Vulcanus. I thought it was a fitting way of calling it. And that's how the rest of the naming convention evolved. So this just does all the basic things that you need a space platform to do and absolutely nothing else. It's melting ice into water. It's using that to make fuel and oxidizer. It's smelting iron ore into plates, and it's using the plates to make ammo, and it's using that to feed the gun turrets, and that's it. And this thing used to be able to just limp out to a planet, but now that everything's legendary, it's a lot more capable, and I've been using it to transport science back from Vulcanus recently. But it was for a long time my personal transport. This was the ship that would take me to a new planet anytime it was time to venture forth and conquer a new world. And by all rights, I should have, massively upgraded this, done some major overhauls by now. There's easy ways to expand this and make it significantly more effective, but I have a sentimental attachment to it. I don't want to change the ship now because this is my first ever space platform in any save of Space Age that I've made that can fly, and it's flown true for many hours. So it's what I'm saying is I've pack bonded to my space platform. It's you may encounter this issue. Humans can pack bond to anything, and that does include space platforms in Factorio SPACE AGE. I'm never changing this ship. This is my plucky little Hephaestus, and I'm keeping him as he is. He doesn't need improving at all. He is perfect already. But yeah, this is the guy that's taken me between all of the worlds, pretty much. Now we get on to ships with cargo functionality. So this was the next one I made, Hermes. So this guy, this big box, just chugs his way around the 4 first planets and just exchanges cargo. It's got a giant cargo hold full of all kinds of different materials. It's got all kinds of requests from all kinds of planets, and it just flies around the first 4 and just delivers whatever they need. And this is basically the backbone of my interplanetary logistics. This is what just keeps everything ticking away. And there's a brilliant new feature that I utilize for this, because you may have noticed there's a lot of sushi belting going on. You will find that there's a lot more reasons and use cases for sushi belts now, and one of the reasons that it now works so well is this fantastic little feature here. So when you do read belt contents, you can tick hold all belts, and then it will output a signal for, well, this has got the entire circuit network on it, but it will output a signal for everything on the whole belt. It is broken up by splitters, so I've got to do a bit of shenanigans here, like I've got multiple connections merging together, but basically you see these little yellow railings, so that means that a read all belts is in play, and it means that this one thing here just outputs the entire contents of the belt. Basically from this splitter round to this splitter, so I just put another one in here, and we just can read the entire contents of the sushi belt, hook that up to all of the inserters coming out of all of the machines, and they will only output if there is a shortage of the particular material on the belt. And it just means, in my view, not in everyone's view, but in my view, sushi belting is the way to go for early game platform construction, is you just slap a sushi belt on it, it can have the asteroids, the ammo, the iron, just anything. Anything you need you can just put on that belt, and you can use inserters to maintain the exact levels. And if you get too much of certain things, you can throw them overboard. So we've got some inserters here that dump asteroids overboard when there's too many of them. Asteroid productivity is a thing, so over time my platforms are becoming more and more productive in terms of their asteroid usage, so we barely need anything that we're picking up these days, so most of it just gets thrown overboard. In fact, this thing might not be running fast enough. No, it's going okay, it's going okay. You gotta check in on your old factory sometimes to make sure everything's still running okay. I do have to say, by the way, that just the way that building space platforms works is very satisfying. It's not too complicated. Like like what you need to achieve is simple enough to not be overwhelming, but still there's an exciting challenge of like making good use of the space and making neat designs that work, because space matters. The bigger the space platform, the slower it is, the more engine power you need. These are all important things to consider. You got to make sure there's enough firepower. You got to make sure there's enough ammo production to maintain the firepower for the amount of time that the platform's going to be in motion. All this kind of thing. It all comes together in a very, very satisfying package. I really love designing space platforms. And I got kind of sad because I ended up designing a platform that basically works for any situation. And now I'm like, but I don't want to just make the same platform for everything. I want to design a new platform for every different challenge that my platforms need to face. So I'm gonna keep doing that. So, after building my bulk freighter to carry everything to everywhere, I had it, literally doing all logistics between my planets. But eventually, I needed to split off some tasks to other platforms to A, make things more redundant, and B, just take a bit of pressure off poor Hermes. He had too much on his plate. And so we built Athena, and this is my Science Express platform. So this thing is significantly faster, triple the engines, for about the same size. This thing can move, and its purpose is to transport science packs, just science packs, for the 3 intermediate planets, and take them all back to Nauvis to actually do research. And I found a neat little way of handling it, because, of course, there is a certain issue with science packs, where the science packs you get on Gleba, the agricultural science packs, they spoil. They decay. From the moment that you create them, they are decaying, and the more they decay, the less science each individual science pack gives. So you have an incentive to get them to your science labs on Nauvis as fast as possible. And initially this was kind of awkward, because I'm like, well, why did they put it there? Because you can't go directly between Vulcanus and Fulgora. What you would really want to do is have a ship that goes to Vulcanus and Fulgora, and then to Gleba, and then back to Nauvis to deliver the science packs. And that way, it's the Gleba science packs spend the least time just being carted around without being actually used. But then I realized there's a really neat solution to the problem. So, Athena starts in Nauvis, heads over to Vulcanus, picks up a bunch of science packs, heads over to Gleba, picks up a smaller amount of science packs, heads back to Nauvis and drops everything off. Then it goes to Fulgora, then back to Gleba, and back to Nauvis again. Initially, things have changed now because I've tweaked the ratios because of, the rates at which the different planets are producing science packs. But basically, the initial way I did it was I picked up 4,000 here, 2,000 here, 4,000 here, and 2,000 here, which meant at the end of the entire loop, the figure 8 that I was doing, I would have delivered 4,000 of each kind of science pack, and it's worked very well. And that's basically how Athena has operated since it was installed. It just gets the Gleba science packs straight over to Nauvis as soon as it picks them up, but still has time to grab all of the other ones as well. It's a neat little solution to the problem. I'm very proud of myself. But this is where I start to diverge from the sushi belt system. So now we have a sushi lane, basically. The outer lane of this is all ammo, the inner lane is asteroids, and then they are split off, and we actually have some backed up belts of asteroids feeding into processing, and we've got some reprocessing as well. And then we've actually got some belts of ore and plates and things like that, just to allow everything to run more efficiently. These days it's not too bad, because everything's gone legendary, and damage has been increased by science, so now it works fantastically. But at the time we needed all of these furnaces to keep this thing able to defend itself. And then we take a big step up. So these were all of our our tier 1 and tier 2 platforms, according to the system that I made up a few minutes ago. Next up, we get to our first tier 3 ship. This is Ares, this big boy. So this is our Aquilo ship. This guy's specific job is to get things from Aquilo to anywhere else that they're needed, and vice versa. And so now we've got some rocket turrets in play. So this needs to be a bit more complicated. This is using advanced asteroid processing. So there are some techs that you unlock that allow you to process asteroids into more different materials. So initially all you get from oxide asteroids is ice, but the advanced one also gives you calcite, which is used to make a more efficient fuel recipe. So now you can make much more fuel for much less resources with the addition of a little bit of calcite. You can get copper as well as iron out of the metal asteroids, and you can get sulfur as well as carbon out of the carbonic asteroids. And this gives you a lot more options in terms of what you can manufacture on board. For one, it means you can make rockets using the sulfur. There's also a way to make, if I can find it, where am I? Up here. There's also a way to make coal out of carbon and sulfur and some water from the ice, so that you can then make the explosives, which you can use to make the rockets. And this is also utilizing now a lot more late game technologies. We've got foundries from Vulcanus, yes, foundries in space, to do more efficient metal processing, and we're also utilizing fusion power to run this thing. Originally this did run entirely off solar, but it did have a big old struggle with it. I eventually upgraded it to fission reactor, and that worked pretty well, but it's just much more easy to maintain a fusion reactor. There's very little actual processing required. You just got to send up the fuel, and it just works, and efficiently too. You don't even need any wiring to make sure that the thing runs efficiently. It does it for you. It's a step up in every way. Fusion reactors are fantastic for power. But we'll get into more of that later. So yeah, this guy is capable of punching through the space routes out to Aquilo and back again to transport things to that frozen wasteland and get the valuable high technology from there back to the rest of the planetary system. And as it is, this is the only ship that really services Aquilo. I do need to probably make some kind of secondary one because it is struggling a little bit for cargo space. We do sometimes run into cargo capacity issues on this thing. But it's very good at its job, never run into any trouble. That's Ares, named because it really felt like going to war heading out through the asteroid field. Right now he's just heading to Vulcanus. He does a quick tour of all the planets to pick up various materials that Aquilo needs, so we're not going to be able to see it punching through the big asteroids right now, but we'll take a look at that later. At this point, I went back to making sort of tier 1 ships, or ships that were meant to operate in tier 1 areas, but over-engineered to hell, because now I've unlocked all these cool new technologies, the advanced processing and stuff. It's like, why not give everything rocket turrets? So next up, we made Helios. So Helios's entire purpose is to deliver calcite from Vulcanus to Nauvis. That's because we need a lot of calcite. This is quite a lot, because you can basically use calcite for more efficient ore processing, and so I'm using it to make Nauvis just as efficient as humanly possible. This also has the fun thing that it also makes the calcite on board. It's actually making it on its own as well, seeing as you can get calcite from asteroids. So it is doing space-based calcite production and then supplementing that with resupplies from Vulcanus. And this thing is over-engineered ridiculously. This basically does everything that Ares can do, but if anything better. The only thing is it's larger. Ares is a very, it's got a, it's a I'm quite proud of how compact Ares is, whereas I just let this thing be huge instead. And it's also incredibly fast on account of the large number of thrusters on the back. This is one of the fastest ships in my fleet. And it doesn't need to be. It's entirely over-engineered. It's fusion powered. This thing does not need any of this. I just decided to go a little bit crazy and design something that's a little bit overkill. And this can go to Ares and can go to Aquilo, and once did by accident. I accidentally gave it the wrong interrupt. Because originally the low fuel interrupt was, oh, hey Ares, go to Aquilo and get more fuel. And of course then I put that on this ship, and it was like, oh, I need to go to Aquilo for fuel, and that was a mistake. But luckily it survived the trip, so we did learn the hard way that this is capable of that, which it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need that at all, but we did it anyway. But yeah, this thing normally just sits in Nauvis orbit, chugging away, making calcite, and if it's not making enough calcite, it has to pop back to Vulcanus to grab some more. Next up, we have the twin ship to Helios, Demeter. This does a similar thing, but for Gleba instead. So this thing is transporting bioflux and various like soils and seeds and things like that from Gleba to Nauvis. It also can make calcite if it wants to, because it's the same basic frame. It's actually a copy paste of Helios, basically, with a couple of modifications. I do love the thruster design. So, interesting thing, by the way, you can now flip every building in the game. You can now horizontally and vertically flip every single building in the game, except thrusters. You can't do it with those. They have these staggered fuel inputs, and they have to be this way round, and you might say, oh, why not just make them flippable? The reason is that you would just have a straight line of thrusters. It would be boring. Instead, you've got to be a bit more imaginative. This is what I've come up with, where we have this sort of staggered system using the pipes to sort of, you can have direct crossovers here, and then you can jump up here, and that makes all of the connections line up correctly. And the great thing is you can change the staggering however you like. You can move a thruster up and down to mess with it. So like, same basic frame on Helios, I moved them all down, so they now make this nice V-shape, and I think that's more interesting than just having a straight line, because literally every single space platform would just have a straight line if you could flip the thrusters. So I understand why they prevented them from being flipped, and in the long run it will make for cooler looking space platforms. So this Demeter also transports artillery to Gleba to keep the locals in check. But yeah, same basic idea as the other one, foundry based metal production. Lots of beacons, going hand with the beacons, fusion power again. Lovely. And now, I believe we have, yes, one platform remaining. Oh, and we're catching it at a very exciting time. This is Zeus. This is my Tier 4 platform, and here you can see it currently harvesting Promethium. It's currently on its way back from a journey into towards the Shattered Planet. So this thing is, it's automatically set up to dive into the Shattered Planet, and at a certain point turn back and return and deliver what it's harvested. So it's currently out here waging war upon this madness. So here you can see huge asteroids, and then also the big asteroids broken up into medium asteroids, and finally broken up into small. So we have these layers of defenses here. Here are our railgun. It's a bit loud. Here are our railgun turrets. Everything's legendary, so these things have a huge range. They take out the huge ones. They're set to only take out the huge ones. You can set target priorities and limit them to those specific targets. Then we have the rocket turrets taking out the big ones, the gun turrets taking out the medium ones, and the grabbers collecting the small ones. We are so efficient in our usage of asteroids at this point that most of these asteroid collectors are set to only harvest Promethium. Only this guy and this guy harvest anything else, and it's enough to keep this entire platform running. We've got, honestly, this is way over-engineered. We've got tons of asteroid processing here. Once again, smelters, but there's even more going on because we now also need to make our railgun ammo. We're also making the Promethium science packs on board. By the way, they're made with biter eggs, which spoil into biters in 30 minutes. So you have this interesting challenge of you gotta get this thing, you gotta park this thing in Nauvis, pick up a bunch of biter eggs, and then haul them over to the Shattered Planet and dive in there and gather enough Promethium asteroid chunks to make the Prometheum science packs before the biter eggs hatch. And just in case they do, the inside of this platform is full of laser turrets set to only shoot, you know, anything alive, anything that alive that might end up on here somehow. Because laser turrets are basically useless against asteroids. You don't want them for asteroids, but for everything else, they're very good. And then we also have some like belt storage shenanigans here. You cannot have storage chests on platforms. You can store in the hub, but you know, in order to increase the storage, you've got to build cargo bays. Basically, it works out that the most efficient way to store Prometheum chunks, because they can't stack in any way, is to store them on belts, and then you can be a bit cheeky and have some underground belts, and then you can reuse the space. And if you're really cheeky, you can have underground belts, and then more underground belts, and then normal belts as well. And if you're even cheekier, there are 4 different colors of belts that can all go underground, and you can braid some insane things and make some very dense storage. But storage isn't actually that viable, really, because it's much better if you can just process them on board. Originally, storage on board was incredibly viable because it took 1 Prometheum chunk to make 10 Prometheum science packs, and then because everyone was making giant storage belts, they changed it to 25 per 10. So this is less viable these days, but I built this back in the earlier days. That's the fun thing about being a playtester, is that you end up building for versions of the game that no longer exist. Also, I have a neat little system here where I'm limiting the fuel input to some of these thrusters, because if I slow the platform down, it doesn't get destroyed. If you go too fast, you're not gonna be able to handle the speed that the asteroids come at you. So this thing switches to a nice slow mode, using all of these wonderful circuit shenanigans. So you can read where you're moving from and moving to. So I just say if I'm moving from or moving to the shattered planet, cut off these pumps here and prevent all but 2 thrusters from running. And that keeps the thing running slow enough that it doesn't get annihilated by huge asteroids flying through the front of it. Because let me tell you, the moment things go wrong on a space platform, they go very wrong. The moment you take a serious hit that knocks out your belts supplying your, you know, ammo to your turrets, you're in serious trouble. But yes, this is currently the pinnacle of my space platform design. Let me tell you, it's terrible. I already want to redesign this thing entirely. It does the job, but I've already worked out, now that I've experienced, you know, how this thing works, how to make a way better platform. So at some point I'm going to be designing something entirely new to do this job infinitely better than Zeus currently does it. But that is all of my space platforms. So now let's start to visit the planets. And here we are on Vulcanus. I decided to visit here myself. Often I'm just going to use remote view, because at this point remote view is almost more useful than being somewhere in some cases. You can now play the game in remote view if you want, pretty much. As long as you have logistics in place, you can do so much with it. But in this case I have visited here personally for a specific reason. But let's take a look at what we got here. Once again, tons of rockets. You're going to need a lot of rockets on your planets to get everything you want into space and to where it needs to be. You got to think of this as, you know, your rockets are your space trains, you know? I mean, I guess rockets are like the inserters loading into trains, and the space platforms are the trains, and that's how you're getting things between all your different locations. So Vulcanus is all about lava processing. So over here, love the mech suit. Over here we have our calcite mine, which is actually running down a bit. I need to do some maintenance on Vulcanus. Vulcanus has gone without a visit from me for quite a while, and there's a couple bits of busy work that needs sorting out. But I'll do it another time, probably on stream. But yes, here's my calcite mine. You can see a bit of it poking out here. Using the big miners that you get on Vulcanus. But these things are so useful, I've used them everywhere. The normal mining drill, the electric mining drill, is extinct in my save right now. There are only big mining drills, because they're just better in every way. But yes, the calcite is used over here to process lava into molten copper and molten iron, and that is how you actually make, you know, all the basic stuff here. It creates a byproduct of stone, more than you know what to do with, so you're going to be throwing a lot of it just back into the lava. But yeah, like, apart from the calcite cost, stone and iron and copper and stone are effectively infinite on Vulcanus. You just pump them out of the nearest bit of lava with an offshore pump. That's an important thing that some new players are running into is every planet you land on, plonk down an offshore pump, whatever the, because you don't know what the ocean's made of, and it's probably something useful. Like pretty much all of the, like, I've got offshore pumps on every planet. You want to be offshore pumping whatever weird liquid the particular planet you're on has for oceans. It's always useful. So you can make molten iron and molten copper, and then you can send these, and this is the foundry building, by the way, which is plus 50% productivity to all recipes before you even put modules in it. So I haven't even put productivity modules in, it's already got plus 50% productivity, and I believe there's cases where recipes that the foundry uses are already more efficient, so you're getting a ton of bang for your buck here. Foundries are the way to go. As long as you've got a source of calcite, you can use them on any planet to make your metal production that much more efficient. And of course it compounds, because every step of the process also has that extra productivity. Not to mention the fact that you can skip steps, so we don't even need to turn iron plates into gears. We're just casting gears directly out of molten iron, same as plates. You can cast copper wire directly as well as copper plates. You can even use foundries to make belts, and you can use them to make the final tier of belt, tungsten belts, or possibly turbo belts. There's currently internal discussion about what they should be called. Right now, at this moment that I'm making this recording, they're called tungsten belts, but it could change at literally any minute. Literally any minute. It might have already changed, I just don't know. They could be turbo belts at any moment. You can even make pipes, you can make steel, iron rods, underground pipes straight from casting, though you need to put pipes into it, but you can use pipes and molten iron to make pipe to grounds. You can cast low density structure by a combination of molten iron and copper and some plastic. And then the actual science pack, metallurgic science pack, is made using the tungsten stuff. So down here we've got some tungsten plate being made, tungsten ore and molten iron, and way over here we've got our tungsten carbide being made, which is carbon, tungsten, and sulfuric acid. Also, there's no oil on Vulcanus. Instead, there are just vents of sulfuric acid. We're just pumping direct sulfuric acid out of the ground with our pump jacks, and then we're processing that into other things. So there's some new recipes. Every planet has piles of new recipes, and we can take a quick look here. Like you can see new buildings and stuff sprinkled throughout these menus. There's a whole new tab for space, new weapons and everything. But here's where a ton of new stuff is. So it's basically sorted by planet. Fun thing is that, like, in the creation of all these planets, it's become clear what is unique about Nauvis, which is, well, for one, the biters, but also uranium. No other planet has uranium. So you basically got, you do have, all the oil stuff is up here, so it's combining lots of different processes from different planets that are maybe only useful on certain planets. But you've got all your Nauvis stuff here. And then, well, all your general stuff here, and then this is your Nauvis recipes, everything nuclear. Then you've got all your Vulcanus recipes, all the stuff about, you know, casting from molten and all the tungsten. Then this line is all your Fulgora stuff, and then this is all of your Gleba stuff, and this is some Nauvis sort of well, I was going to say Nauvis slash Gleba, but mainly Nauvis stuff that you unlock from your Gleba stuff, and then you've got your Aquilo stuff down here, and then all your science. So it's sort of sorted by planet, and you can see that, like, every planet is introducing tons of new recipes, even before you get to, like, actual new buildings and things that are created from these recipes. So here, we can use some calcite to turn sulfuric acid into steam, and then we can condense the steam into water, which we can then use in cracking, because we can also use the sulfuric acid and calcite and coal to make heavy oil, and then we can crack it using the water that we've made, and that's how we get all of the oils and how we get, like, plastic and everything. And lubricants and so on. So you can ultimately do oil processing on Vulcanus by just basically reverse engineering sulfuric acid. Of course, you don't then want to make sulfuric acid because you already have that, you know, straight from the tap. But you might need sulfur, which is the funny thing, is you might have to make sulfur ultimately out of it and go, like, all the way around the steps back to one step before sulfuric acid, because you can't just turn it back into sulfur that way. And yeah, so basically I just showed up here and built a new factory, basically made a sort of, like, I was trying to make a main bus but with liquids. I didn't leave enough room, so things get a little bit spaghetti over here, but that's what's going to happen when you're on a whole new planet with a whole new, you know, set of recipes to work out, is you have no idea what you're going to need and where and how much, so you just kind of, you know, bash it all together and try and make it work. And then over here we get into some Fulgora stuff, but basically it's circuit production. Yeah, it's very interesting. All you get in terms of ores here, you get your sulfuric acid, you know, vents, and then you get calcite deposits, because that's used as, you know, to make a lot of the recipes work. You get coal. We got some... oh, it's gone. We got some down here. Here we go. I've got a coal deposit down here. Very big deposits. And the final one is the tungsten ore. Oh, I need to... uh-oh. I gotta work on that soon. That's a problem for later, though. And also, this is a great planet for solar power, because it's so close to the sun. It gets, I think, 4 times the solar power of Nauvis. Someone worked it out. Apparently, the solar panel to accumulator ratio on Vulcanus is almost 1-to-1. Close enough to 1-to-1 that you're just gonna want to do 1-to-1. It's like, it's not quite... It's like it's a slight variance. It's like 1.0 something. Who cares? So it turns out that it's basically 1-to-1 because the solar power is so intense, and also the day-night cycle is so short. The day-night cycle on Vulcanus is 90 seconds, I believe. So you're very rapidly flipping between day and night, so you don't have to... The power that you generate with the solar does not have to last long through the night as well. But the final notable feature of Vulcanus is denoted by all of these regions here, these... boxes with lines through. These are the territories of the demolishers, and we're going to go visit one right now. I've killed a lot of small demolishers. I haven't killed a single medium one, and at this point I think small demolishers are extinct on my Vulcanus because I've cleared out all the territories that they had. But we're getting to the point where we could do with a bit more expansion, so we got to work out if we can take out some mediums. But luckily I have endgame tech, and we're going to see how it fares. Oh, you can see we got a science launch going on here. Athena must have just arrived, and so every single rocket is launching metallurgic science at once. And that's why you want to have a ton of silos. You notice the doors don't even close, it immediately preps the next rocket. There's no time for closing the door and all that fanfare and pomp and circumstance. We've got to get the next rocket ready. We've got space logistics to do. But yes, we are going to seek out a demolisher and see how we fare in combat now that I am... much more well-equipped than I was before, when I could barely take out a small one with a lot of difficulty. We've picked up a trail. Demolishers leave this trail behind them, wherever they go. It does unfortunately interfere with my suit tech, so I lose the ability to fly and move quickly while I'm in this field, but once we spend a bit of time out of it, we should recover, be able to fly again. Move at full speed. I know I have a ridiculous amount of speed in this thing because I have 7 legendary exoskeletons, which each give a movement bonus of 75%. It's ridiculous. It's maybe a bit overkill. It does make me feel like I'm moving through treacle whenever I don't have these enabled, whenever I start a new game. But we are going to switch to our railgun, our legendary railgun. Doesn't have legendary ammo. Interesting thing about weaponry is that generally, higher quality does not increase damage. It only increases range. But if something has ammo, increasing the quality on the ammo will increase the damage. Which, by the way, while we're on that topic, as it comes to me, so the personal laser defense has been nerfed. Its damage has been cut to 1/3 of what it was before. And a lot of people are saying, well, that's not too bad, because if it's legendary quality, then it'll be 83% as effective as it was before. So using quality, you can get it to be almost as good as it used to be. No. No, 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 no. Quality only increases the range. No matter how high quality these things are, they are still 1/3 of what they were before, which is why I just have 3 times as many as before. The suit has the space for it, so it balances out. It balances out. You can still use personal laser defense. It still works just fine. So it's not too bad. It's not too bad a nerf, but you cannot fix it with quality, which some people were thinking you could. Anyway, here's our friend. Here's our medium demolisher. This thing has 100,000 health and an insane amount of regen. I don't even know how much regen this thing has. But we're going to see if we can take the guy out. We do have to be careful, but this thing's pretty long range and very high damage, so we might be able to handle this pretty easily. These things were once impossible. When I first came to Vulcanus, there was no chance I could ever kill one of these. I was just about able to kill some small ones with some effort eventually, and open up enough territory to be able to expand. Because the thing is, If you build anything inside this space, this boy's gonna come for you. Oh, actually, it's this... Oh, he's this one. I don't actually know the worm in this territory. This is, in fact, the worm for this territory. But the point is, if you build anything in these territories, there's certain buildings that you can get away with, I believe, but most buildings that you build in these territories, especially like mining drills and things like that, he will beeline for it and run it over. If you want to be mining things in these areas, you have to kill the worm that has the territory. You have to expand your territory and claim the territory from it, effectively. Once you've killed it, it's dead. It's gone forever. It does not come back. So all you gotta do is take it out once, and you're good. But let's give this a go. This might be easy at this point because of how late game I am, but it's hard to say. Yeah, that was very easy. That's amazing. So yeah, this is a railgun. You get this on Aquilo. And I've also, you know, made it legendary for the extra range so I can stay out of range of its attacks. It even managed to get an attack off on me, even so. A very cool thing that happens when you kill these things is they turn into this sort of, you know, this ridge of tungsten ore that you can mine if you like, but I kind of like keeping them intact as a kind of monument. But yeah, this will just stay here now, permanently. A new cliff on the landscape. And the territory is mine. I wonder if we can, on our way home... Here's the guy that... Oh, there's my lasers trying to run. Lasers do nothing. I believe he's... Yeah, he's entirely... He doesn't even care about the lasers. Not bothered one bit. He's just going about his business. I mean, I could try... Let's see, is he... Oh yeah, electric is a weakness of his, so we could give... Oops, we could get... Tab is no longer change weapons. It's messing with me. Tab is now open remote view. But we can see if we can take him out with the Tesla gun. Which we get from Fulgora. But I don't know if that's going to be enough. We'll give it a go. Yep, he is healing instantly. We're doing a lot of damage, but he's instantly healing from that damage. Okay, well, railgun it is. Okay, one hit down the middle gets him because it hits every segment. I see. Yeah, that'll do it. Oh, another one. Yeah, okay, so when you have a railgun, shoot down the middle. And then it only takes one shot. Yeah, the fun thing about late game is that you can get so incredibly powerful. I've also, I've hugely buffed railgun damage using late game science, so the damage is even higher than it would be, even higher than it was when I originally got it. Oh, this is my old coal mine, which my bots are now upgrading to legendary. But yes, that's Vulcanus. Let's get to the next planet. And here we are in the gloom of Fulgora as the nightly lightning strikes take place to recharge the power grid. So this is my favorite planet. Even though we're visiting it second, and it is my recommendation to visit it second. Like people have different ideas about what order is best to go to each planet. In my opinion, the best order is Vulcanus, Fulgora, Gleba. But a lot of people make an argument for Fulgora, Vulcanus, Gleba, and I think that there's plenty of good reasons for it. Even though it's my favorite, I hold off and wait till I've conquered Vulcanus before I come here. As a general rule. But this is a planet of, well, in a certain way, death. This is a dead world that was once occupied by some kind of civilization, and the ruins are still here, marking the landscape. Some kind of civilization once mastered this planet, it would seem. The place is covered in old structures, but it is long dead, and so are they. And all that remains now is not even any resources, no ore patches, just giant mountains of scrap. If I need to find one that I'm not mining. Oh, here's some. Just big piles of scrap that we need to dig up and process. The place is plagued by constant destructive lightning strikes that can only be stopped by lightning rods. There are some lightning rods of the old civilization dotted around the place. These little things here that will collect they'll grab the lightning and protect the surrounding structures. And then we can build our own higher tech things that can not only you know, attract the lightning, but use it to generate electricity and power the power grid. In fact, this entire like everything that I've built on this planet is powered entirely by the lightning. All we need is a ton of accumulators to store the charge that is collected overnight so that it can then be expended during the day. These are all legendary accumulators as well, so they store 2.5 times as much power as normal accumulators. And here we have the nightly lightning strikes again. So there's a safe period during the day. It is safe to wander out in the open. Also, if you have a power suit with shields, you will be able to just take hits from the lightning without any concern at all. So it's a good idea to show up with some kind of power suit technology. You can always get something from Nauvis. Though this is the planet where you unlock the mech suit, the mech armor that lets you fly, which is why a lot of people I think want to go for Fulgora before Vulcanus, so you can then fly over the lava. There is a fun thing I did on Vulcanus actually. If we hop back there briefly, I'm still stood there. I'm just remote viewing it for the rest. But there was a tungsten ore patch here, I think, or was it? Yeah, I think it was a tungsten ore patch. There was a worm guarding this area. I took it out, and then I was like, well, how do I get there? Because I can't actually get to it. It is surrounded on all sides by lava. There is no way through. And then I realized that I could make an elevated rail over to this patch of land, and then I could ride the train and get out, and then go and build the mine, set up the mine to deliver ore using the train, ride the train back, and leave it to it, which is, you know, a bit of a roundabout solution to the problem. If I had a mech suit, I could have just flown straight over there, but it is fun that you can use the elevated rails to transport yourself to locations that you can't otherwise reach, because of course you can't landfill lava. You need special foundations, which were unlocked very late in the game, to actually fill in the lava lakes, which I have done a little bit of over here. And yeah, a similar situation also exists on Fulgora, because there are these weird sort of I believe it's like sand, basically. This weird sort of oily sand between these patches of actual solid stone surface. So you can build on this. You cannot build on any of this. Now I've unlocked the foundation. The foundation fills lava. It also fills this oil sand plain area. And I've been using that to, like, you know, build little structures out here. So there's some foundation. It looks very similar to concrete. But yeah, you have to build on these little islands. And so there's sort of different island types in a way. There's these larger, more snaking islands that have some scrap on them. And then there are these small islands that have incredibly dense pockets of scrap on them. And so you end up with an interesting challenge where you need the larger islands to actually, you know, do processing. But the mines have to be built on these separate little islands. So I got these two here that are just like covered in mining drills. They're too far away to connect to the power grid, so they have to have their own power grid. So they've got their own lightning collectors generating power, and their own individual, you know, sets of accumulators to run the power. I've connected the two to each other at least. So yeah, these accumulators run both islands. But you get interesting power graphs. This is barely running these days, so the power barely drops at all during the day. But yeah, there's no lightning during day, so you've got to run off of what you've stored in the night. And yeah, so it's basically it encourages you to build trains. It also encourages you to use the elevated rails, because you need to use elevated rails to get over the oily sands. So you can't just build tracks directly on it. You have to build these rail supports and build tracks on top. So that's why I've got a little station here, connects over this bridge here and to here. I am lucky that I have these super dense scrap deposits right by the island that I'm using for all my actual processing. Obviously eventually these will run out, but they're running out very, very slowly because everything is legendary. All legendary all the time. Late game is so fun for just like overclocking everything to insane degrees and making it so that ore lasts forever, and you know, all of your resources are incredibly productive. I should have mentioned more about these really while we were on Vulcanus, but one of the interesting things about the big mining drills is the resource drain feature. So resource drain is a separate stat to productivity, and it's basically how many pieces of ore are used per ore that is generated. The basic big mining drill, the normal quality big mining drill, has a resource drain of 50%, meaning that only 50% of the time will outputting a piece of scrap actually use a piece of scrap in the ground. For every one scrap you get two. This is down at 8%. I believe that it might actually be like, you know, 8.33 recurring percent. I'm not sure. But that's my guess, in which case, basically, for every one scrap used, 12 scrap is made. And on top of that, you apply productivity, which thanks to late game science, being able to be overclocked incredibly, is plus 1,340%. So I don't even know how. I think I'm getting over 150 scrap per piece of scrap from this mining drill. And most of the productivity isn't even from the modules. They're doing a little bit of it, but most of it is just done by research. So it is a permanent, insane buff, and it all stacks to mean that your ore usage gets very, very low as the game goes on. And you can get so much more out of every deposit. And this is a 29 million deposit, so it gets insane. It gets really insane. But yeah, let's go through how the processing works here. So scrap is a fascinating thing, because here, if we mouse over here, you can see what this recycler here is doing. This recycler is taking in scrap, and it is outputting a mix of processing units, advanced circuits, low-density structure, solid fuel, steel, concrete, batteries, ice, raw stone, holmium ore, iron gears, and copper wire. And this is everything that you can generate on Fulgora, except... Remember what I said? Offshore pumps everywhere. Let me see if I can find... Where's my nearest one? There's got to be one around here somewhere. Or... Oh, there's one here that's kind of cheaty, because I've since put foundations here. But if you put... Let's find a proper one. I think I've got... Here we go. If you put an offshore pump on the edge of one of these islands on Fulgora, you pump out of the oily sands heavy oil. Straight heavy oil. Don't have to do any... You know, don't need a refinery. You just immediately have heavy oil. You can make straight into lubricant. You can melt some ice to make water, to then crack it into light oil and petroleum gas, and you can use that to make sulfur and sulfuric acid. You don't need to do this, though. In order to like, you know, complete, effectively, Fulgora, you don't actually need to do anything beyond cracking heavy oil into light oil. This is all just optional extra stuff that I decided to do because I wanted to make some processing units. But generally, you don't want to make processing units because you get those from scrap. Here we go. You get them from scrap. What you don't get is things like circuits. So you then end up in a fascinating situation where you need circuits for things, but all you have are better circuits. And what you need to do is throw them in the recyclers. You want to, like, the way that you're meant to play Fulgora is recycling these high-level materials. So you want to recycle processing units into advanced circuits and circuits. You sometimes want to recycle advanced circuits into circuits and plastic and wire. Sometimes you want to recycle low-density structure so that you can get more copper or get more plastic or get more steel. And basically, it turns the entire, you know, crafting tree on its head. You're given all of the you know, the high-level materials. And to get the low-level materials, you've got to break the high-level materials down. You are sifting through the scrap of an ancient civilization. Sometimes when you just want some iron, you've got to, like, you know, tear apart a battery to get the iron components out of it, because you can't find any iron, but what you can find is a mountain of batteries, because it's the trash of a dead civilization. It's a fascinating mechanic. It's really fun to play with, and it's the perfect excuse, and in fact it's a requirement really, to make sorters. So this is my big old sorting array that sorts everything that my recyclers could possibly produce. All the basic things that come out of scrap, and then I've also included all the things that come out of the things that come out of scrap. So you don't get any iron plates out of scrap, but you can get them if you recycle gears, and you're going to want iron plates for various things, so you're going to want to throw a lot of gears in the recyclers. So we get them from those. We get copper from... copper wire, recycling that from recycling low-density structure. You get circuits, obviously, from recycling high-level circuits. You get plastic from a lot of things. You get iron ore from recycling concrete. And, of course, you also get stone bricks from doing that. And then I put this all onto a bus, a tiny little bus, because that's the thing, we're working with little islands. I've expanded a lot of sections of the island now. It was smaller before I unlocked Foundation. And I could only unlock that long after I had to master Fulgora. But you've got to work in a cramped space here. But I still managed to make a bus. You're never going to stop me making a bus. I'm always going to find a way to make a bus, even if it's a liquid bus using lava stuff, or a bus made of things derived from scrap. I'm going to find a way to make a bus out of it. You cannot stop me. But basically, this production line is about doing various different steps to process holmium ore into various other things, ultimately creating the electromagnetic science pack, using supercapacitors, using accumulators, and that's perfect, really. This is a brilliant move by the developers, by the way. The fact that you require accumulators to make the science pack means that you can constantly just produce a ton of them. Using quality modules, the basic quality ones can go into making the science packs, and everything higher can be used to make better use of your space, because the higher quality your accumulators, the less of them you need to be able to run your power grid through the day while you're waiting for the next night to bring the lightning. So very good system. Brilliant choice there. But yeah, basically, you know, we get into the weeds with these recipes if you like. I mean, the quickest way, really, if I go back to my character, is to just, like, mouse through them. And you can pause if you care. So here's the scrap recipe. It shows all the percentages that you get out of them. They don't add up to 100, so there is a chance that you just get nothing from scrap as well. This is also a recipe you can do with your hands, and it takes 0.2 seconds. So you can do this fast. I think they've made it slower. I think it used to be like 0.08 or something insane. They've made it slightly slower, I think. But you can just hand process the scrap, because it's literally you are personally with your hands sifting through the scrap and picking out the important things. But obviously, ultimately, you're going to want it to be done by machines. But yeah, you turn the holmium ore into holmium solution, melt some ice for water, use some raw stone. The holmium solution can then be smelted into holmium plates. You can use foundries for that to be even more efficient, so that's the plus 50% productivity straight away. Then you make superconductors using copper plates, plastic, holmium, and light oil. So you've got to make the light oil using the water and the heavy oil. You've got to get the copper plates from somewhere and the plastic from somewhere, because they don't you don't get those as is. You've got to deconstruct things to make those, recycle things. Electrolyte is made of stone, heavy oil, and holmium solution, and then it all comes together to make the supercapacitors, which are then used to the science. And also, in order to do a lot of this, you require the building known as the electromagnetic plant, or the EM plant, because it's hard to say electromagnetic sometimes. It's a big mouthful. But these things are brilliant. So they, just like the foundries, have a built-in plus 50% productivity, and they also have 5 module slots. So anything that you can make with an EM plant, you can squeeze a lot more out of it if you use EM plants to do it. And it's also fantastic for quality grinding. So all of the different kinds of modules can be made in EM plants, and so, you know, you can put 5 quality modules in instead of 4 and just squeeze a little bit more out of them, which ends up compounding as you repeatedly recycle and try and get higher qualities. Very, very useful for that. This is also where we make the Tesla turrets, which are fantastic. I don't think we're going to see any in action, because I've kind of neutralized all alien-based threats at this stage of the game. But they're very fun to play with. They send out bolts of electricity, which can then jump between multiple targets and then fork as well. You saw a little bit of it with the Demolisher, but you didn't see the full effects. It's just jumping between segments. But you can hit multiple badges at once, and the higher quality the turret, the more it will fork. So it's actually one case where the turret itself being higher quality does actually make it do more damage, because the more it forks, the more creatures it's hitting, and therefore the more damage it's doing. So they're very useful. Very good sort of mid to late game weapon I found for dealing with biters. More effective than uranium ammo in my experience in an SMG. So, you know, in the mid game when I was still sometimes fighting biters hand to hand, I was doing it with the Tesla gun. But yeah, so that is my Fulgora, basically. I just had a lot of fun basically with the sorting system. So just there's a ton of buffer chests so that they can feed items to anything that requests them. I just got to remember to request from buffer chests with everything on Fulgora. And then everything's hooked up to wiring. I've got light indicators to tell me if there's shortages. So right now there is a shortage of batteries. That is a concern, but I also have hooked, like, as well as wiring up all of these chests and wiring them all to these lights, they're also wired up to various different things. So I've got, here's some circuit production. So if I'm not getting enough circuits from recycling, then I can make them as well using copper wire and iron recycled from gears. And then I've got some belt stoppers here, so if there's a shortage that is dangerous enough of circuits, then these will kick in and dump circuits into the system. I've got a similar thing for copper wire. I've got a tiny thing for processing units. I've got another one for advanced circuits. I don't have anything making batteries, but what I instead have is over here, the scrap is being stopped from being delivered, because if there's too much scrap, then, you know, everything's just going to overflow. So all of these belts have overflows. If the belt is full, because the chests are full, then the item that tries to go in will instead go here onto this waste belt. And everything on the waste belt, ultimately, after going through a couple of things that can grab it if they want it, goes into recyclers and just gets recycled and looped back into the sorter. And then certain things that recycle into themselves from the beginning just get looped back around, because if they're in the recyclers, then they're done. We don't need them anymore. And yeah, so the scrap is stopped unless there is a shortage of something. So we've got it set up for if there's a battery shortage, if there's a processing unit shortage, if there's a holmium ore shortage, or if there's an advanced circuit shortage, then one of these belts will kick in. And thanks to belt stacking, everything's stacked 4 high in here, one belt is basically enough to feed the entire factory and make plenty of everything. So all of these recyclers kick in from a single one of these tungsten stacked belts, which is the equivalent, by the way, of over 10 blue belts in 1.1. Let's one of these run and feed the entire system. That's the fascinating thing about a lot of these technologies, like the quality and the belt stacking and everything, is that instead of building out to do more, you can now build up. You can make what you have better in the same amount of space. So factories are now capable of doing vastly more than they were before without being a massive mega base sprawl. And then you can then build mega bases at that scale to do even more insane rates of production compared to before, without destroying your UPS as much as it would have in the past. But that is my Fulgora. On to the next one. Welcome to Gleba. Gleba is an interesting planet because some people love it, some people hate it. It is the Marmite of the space age planets. Yeah, some people love it, some people hate it, some people go from loving it to hating it. Some people go from hating it to loving it. And it's an interesting one. I've talked about it a lot already on stream about how I feel about it, but basically my experience, I went from hate to love in my case with Gleba, because it is a planet that makes you think completely differently about how you build a factory. Now, don't get me wrong, I still made a bus. I still worked out how to make it. You can't stop me building a bus. I will always build a main bus. But it did force me to think differently about factory building, which led me to a very fun sort of epiphany moment that I just really enjoyed, because you like the big mechanic of Gleba is spoilage. Everything new on Gleba pretty much spoils over time. Everything will, given enough time, decay into, usually, spoilage, and spoilage is not that useful. The thing that it was is a lot more useful than the thing it turns into. That, you know, it makes sense. And so you have to learn how to process everything with that in mind. And what that has ultimately led to is what the playtester community has come to refer to either as river-based factory design or flow-through-based factory design. So the basic principle is, and you don't have to do it this way, there are other ways, but it seems to be the prevailing method that people are following. And I got to have the enjoyment of basically sort of like having this method click in my brain for myself, which to me felt very similar to the moment 10 years ago when I, you know, independently came up with the idea for the main bus and then was very excited about it, and then learned that that it was a smart thing that I come up with because other people were doing it. It gave me, I had the same moment where I was like, oh, this is what I need to do. And then, you know, I show off what I'd made and people are like, oh yeah, that's called flow through. And it's like, aha, that's, you know, great minds think alike. I'm one of the great minds, that kind of thing. But the basic principle of the flow through design is that the belt never stops. That's the basic idea, is like once you make something that spoils, you put it on the fastest belt you have, and you run it to wherever it needs to be, and if wherever it needs to be turns out not to need it, you keep running it past anything that could possibly use it until you run out of things that could possibly use it, and then you keep it running to somewhere where it can be destroyed, basically. That's the tactic. So we'll run through this from the beginning to the end here. And actually, it's a good time. Well, we'll first say, so here's my agriculture towers. They are harvesting trees. So here we're harvesting jelly stem, which is used to make jelly nut, one of the two fruits that you harvest on Gleba. And I've got this large sort of industrial scale farming operation here. These like neatly ordered rows of trees. The developers were talking in Friday Facts about how it's a sort of neat sort of merging of the natural and the unnatural, where like you come to this natural world and you're utilizing what's here, but you've made it into a factory. You've made it into these regimented rows of trees. It's no longer natural or wild. It has been tamed. But still, you need the trees. You still have to have trees in the end. So these things just they plant, and when something is fully matured, they're harvested and it's outputted onto. I got some underground belts to make, try and make good use of the space. So you have to use some tiles for outputting, but I try and minimize the number of tiles that I cover because they could be used for planting trees. So these are the ones that make the jelly stems, and then over here I have another farm that harvests the Yumako trees to make the Yumako fruit. And there is one issue that I ran into that I think is a small snag right now, and I think is the reason why some people don't like Gleba, is that when you first arrive on Gleba, it's kind of overwhelming. You're confronted with this mess of color, and you know that some of the colors matter and some don't, and it's difficult initially to work out what's important. So I'm going to give a quick guide to just kind of help people who first arrive on Gleba to just like make the process easier, because I think that the first half hour is the most difficult on Gleba and the one that frustrates people the most. And once you get past that, things become easier and more fun. And then we'll get back to talking about flow through. So basically, the mini-map is the key for me. The mini-map is the important thing. You need to look at the colors of the mini-map. The most important color is white. If you see white, that is something important. That is trees. So here, this white is Yumako trees. And over here, there's one little jelly stem marked by a white square here. And these are within this mess of other colors. I'm just going to turn off some overlays here because it's a little bit chaotic. There's a little bit too much going on. By the way, if we turn off basically everything, you see these little colored lines? These are liquids. There's now a Show Pipelines button that shows you all of the liquids on the minimap and shows you how they're connected. So we can see, I believe this is the lubricant line here. And this is steam here in some of these steam turbines. And there's some water. And it's a very, very good system. I should show you it on an oil setup, but there's no oil setups on Gleba. You don't need them. But it's beautiful watching it all work, and it's just a brilliant, neat little feature. And by the way, when you mouse over pipe, it also shows you where it's connected to. So when you've got a spaghetti mess that you're trying to decipher, you mouse over pipe and you can see where it's actually going, where it's connected and where it isn't. This is actually a defunct pipe. It doesn't even do anything anymore. And now I know because I moused over it and I can see the end down here is nothing. I think. Yep, nothing. There is an old section of the factory. This is defunct. It used to run. I've now upgraded to a new factory, which exists down here. Look at this. You can't stop me building a main bus. I will always build a main bus. So, yeah, white marks trees, but then you need to understand where the trees can grow. And you can kind of see here that, like, okay, obviously the trees are growing within this particular color of yellow here. But there's other colors of yellow. What does this mean? What is this green? What is this green? Are these important? What's this blue here? So I made a quick guide. I'm going to show it here now. So, this is my quick guide to Gleba soil. As it currently stands, this is possibly subject to change. At the end of the day, the game is not actually out yet, so there's another week. And I am in a playtest version, and some of this stuff might end up being tweaked. But basically, these are the colors that matter. So yeah, so it's a little bit much, but basically you can ignore all of the other colors. They don't mean anything. The 8 colors that you see on this list are what matters. So let's go to the red biome. And so as you can see by the key, each color, it then says what the color is. So in this color here, you can grow jelly nuts. You can grow the trees immediately, that's why the trees are here. In this one, you need to create artificial jelly nut soil, which you can make pretty easily on Gleba fairly early on, and you can use it to expand to make, you know, large enough areas to do some larger scale growing with agricultural towers. Then, this color here can be grown on eventually. A later game tech, you will have to have completed Gleba for it, and I think also Aquilo, but a later game tech is overgrowth soil, which will allow you to grow in even less suitable soil. So this color becomes growable in once you have overgrowth jelly nut soil. This color you can never grow in. No kind of soil can be used to turn this into terrain that you can actually grow the tree in. And then it's basically the same deal over here in the green biome, where you can grow Yumako in this color here. If you have artificial Yumako soil, you can grow in this color here, so you can make some larger scale growing. Overgrowth soil lets you grow in this color here, and you can never grow in this color here. So this is the thing that tripped me up for the first while, is trying to understand what the colors meant. So here is this guide. I will try, if I remember, to post a link to this image somewhere so you can literally download it and have it up on your second monitor while you're playing, because it definitely, like, I think it's good to have this just laid out for you immediately. Makes things a lot simpler. Because, yeah, initially you're like, what colors are what? What matters? You know, there's this whole blue biome here. There used to be more kinds of trees in earlier playtests, as I understand it, so I believe that once there were trees that grew in a blue biome as well, and there may have been even more biomes on top of that. So the important things are the green biome and the red biome, and that guide there will tell you the colors. But yeah, the brighter the better, except not always, because the darker the better for these two. It's this way you need a key. I just think you need a key. Hopefully they'll put a key in the tips and tricks, but for now they haven't, so I've made my own. Anyway, back to it. So, these agricultural towers make the fruit. The fruit heads down here. You notice it's backed up, but actually this is a deliberate thing. So I want to utilize every single fruit that my trees generate, because you need to process the fruit to generate the seeds. And so if you don't process all the fruit, you might not get enough seeds back to keep growing the fruit. So every piece of fruit needs to be processed. However, things kind of rise and fall when you have these farms like this. Sometimes all the trees will be ready to go at once, and sometimes not many will. Like, there's barely any fruit coming out of here now. In a short while, there'll be a ton of fruit coming out of here, and it forms a sort of steady cycle, a sort of sine wave, basically. And it's true for both of my orchards, that a huge wave of resources will come, and then there'll be nothing for a while. So I run them all down these belts here. And here I have some stack inserters, which are a new kind of inserter. It's confusing. The old stack inserters are now called bulk inserters, and these are called stack inserters because they literally place stacks. These are how you make, how you put items into stacks. So these are moving things in like 16 at a time and dropping them in 4 stacks of 4 when they do. But I have specifically tuned these to output at a very specific rate that evens out the rise and fall of the supply rate. So just as this belt starts to run out with this rate, so I've limited this to 8 at a time to slow it down a little bit, but it's also a legendary one, so it moves very fast. But just as this is running out, a larger amount of fruit is going to start coming through, it's going to start building up again. And the same goes for here. And that's how I keep a steady rate of fruit heading into my flow-through bus. So the important thing is to make sure that the belt never stops. You want to make sure you process all the fruit so you get all the seeds, which means you have to make sure you're always processing all the fruit you get. So I'm processing all of it. I'm using productivity, but right at the end I'm using speed modules, because if we get too much, it starts to build up and fill up the belt. Then we want to just quickly process it less efficiently to make sure that we're still processing it all. So we turn the fruit into mash. We turn the jelly nut into jelly. These head down the line, and then there's various different types of processing going on. So we're making bioflux, which is basically the key ingredient of Gleba, by combining mash and jelly. And then we're turning the bioflux into nutrients. And nutrients are important because they're used to feed biochambers. So these are the biochambers. A lot of the recipes on Gleba require biochambers, and biochambers don't use electricity. Instead, they use food. You gotta feed them, and you gotta feed them with nutrients. There's 3 different kinds of ways to make nutrients. You can make them with spoilage, you can make them with your Mako mash, or you can make them with bioflux. I believe bioflux is the most efficient way to do it, ultimately. So basically I just have making nutrients out of spoilage to kickstart the process, because in order to make nutrients I've got to use nutrients. So there's a chance that this thing could jam and then fail. So we have this kickstarting system here which uses spoilage to make nutrients. You can make very crappy nutrients. They're 50% spoiled the moment that you make them, but you can use spoilage to make nutrients as an emergency measure. So I have this wired up to only do so if there's you know, a shortage. If for some reason the system breaks and there is no nutrients on the line, then it will output them and kickstart them. And I'm also making it out of mesh. I've just got this as a sort of also separate backup system, but it's in normal operation. It's being made from bioflux. Then down here we're making our science packs. This is where it gets a bit spicy. So here we have pentapod eggs. So pentapods are the enemy creatures of Gleba. And we need to basically breed their eggs to make the agricultural science pack. So this is a recipe that uses basically feeds nutrients to a pentapod egg in water, and it makes another egg. And then with productivity, I've been able to boost this a bit. So biochambers give plus 50% productivity as a base. They also have a crafting speed of well, actually I was going to say 8, but that isn't. This is boosted. This is oh no, this isn't boosted. I think, yeah, the crafting speed is 8. They've changed this recently, so certain things I'm slightly behind on because they've, like... Okay, they have a crafting speed of 2. Why is this 8? Oh, I'm boosting it with beacons, that's it. Yeah, they changed it recently. It did have a crafting speed of 1. Oh, that's also being boosted. Yeah, it did have a crafting speed of 1. They recently boosted it to 2. To basically make it so that you would prefer to use the biochambers rather than... assemblers. I could be using biochambers for the fruit processing, but I use assembling machines because I worry about the system locking up if I use biochambers that need nutrients, that need the things that it makes, you know. So I could do it that way. I've considered making the change, but so far they use assemblers. But you can use biochambers, and you have to use biochambers for most of the other recipes. So these get plus 50% productivity off the bat, and then I've also crammed this with more productivity, so I'm getting way more eggs out of the eggs that I use, which means I don't need as many eggs going, like, running around on a belt to keep all these things running, which is fine by me, because if the eggs spoil, they of course hatch. That's how that works. And so the science packs are made by combining bioflux with pentapod eggs, and of course it needs a bit of nutrients as well to run it. And by the way, when you use items that have a spoilage value to make other items that have a spoilage value, they will inherit it. So these science packs end up with the average of the spoilage of the eggs and the bioflux. Luckily, bioflux takes 2 hours to spoil, so it's very slow. Eggs are quicker, 15 minutes, but we're making them and literally direct inserting them, so it keeps the spoilage, the freshness on these science packs pretty high, and agriculture science packs last an hour. It's all proportional basically. So if let's ignore the egg for now. If the bioflux was half spoiled, so it had 1 hour remaining, then the science pack would be half spoiled, meaning it would have half an hour remaining. So there's also something to bear in mind, is that, like, the fruits, they spoil in a matter of, like, I think nutrients, jelly, and mash all spoil in 4, 5, and 6 minutes. I forget which one is which, but they all spoil very fast, so you gotta process them fast. So these things get on the belt, and they go. And they immediately run up to machines that need them. So we run these down, we run them past the machines, we run them straight on, we run them past the next machines. The belt must never stop. Flow through. It must keep flowing through. Say we've got, like, these just generate eggs from eggs, and then these are using the eggs that these generate to generate the eggs for the science packs. And I've had 0 incidents. No egg hatching incidents have happened on this loop. And this has been running for many hours at this point. But just in case, I've got some big old Tesla turrets watching it, which is overkill. Tesla turrets do friendly fire damage. It's a very bad idea to have Tesla turrets, but they look so cool. It's a big 4x4 thing that fires lightning. Who wouldn't want some? Down here we've got a re-up of the nutrient supply. You need a lot of nutrients to run a Gleba factory, so we've got to have, you know, more nutrient production down the line to keep it going. And the nutrient must keep flowing. The nutrient must always flow. And here's a lot of interesting recipes that you get. So all of the oil products are, you know, the final products are made immediately using everything on Gleba. So you can make plastic using mash and bioflux. And by the way, things made from things that spoil, that wouldn't normally spoil, don't spoil. So the plastic doesn't spoil, the sulfur here doesn't spoil. This is made from bioflux and spoilage, so you got to put spoilage on your bus as well. You make lubricants directly from jelly. And you make rocket fuel from bioflux and jelly and a bit of water. Just make the rocket fuel immediately. You don't need solid fuel or anything. You just directly make the fuel. And then we get to a very interesting mechanic. This is how you make ore on Gleba. In earlier versions that I didn't quite play, they had ore deposits and people didn't like it. So they're like, what if we make it more interesting? So now there is ore bacteria. This is iron bacteria, and it spoils in 1 minute into iron ore, which is fascinating. So you can make bacteria using jelly. It creates some spoilage byproduct. This is an inefficient way of doing it. Really, it's bad form for me to just have this machine running at all times, because what you can do is you can basically cultivate the bacteria. So 1 bacteria plus a bioflux will make 4 bacteria. Now, obviously, you've only got a minute to do this thing, because of how quickly these things decay, but as long as you have this thing running continuously, you will always have a supply of bacteria, and the excess can all be sent out down a belt where it will very quickly spoil into iron ore before it gets to your furnaces, or if your furnaces are right there, you might have to deliberately delay their arrival to the furnaces to make sure they spoil in time. But yeah, use jelly to basically kickstart the process with iron bacteria, use mash to kickstart it with copper bacteria, and then once you do that, all you need is some bioflux, and some nutrients of course, to cultivate it, and basically you have an infinite supply. So yeah, I should switch these off. It's silly to have these running, but it's good to make a sort of like emergency backup system where like if things build up and then it all turns into ore and then clears out, you can kick this in to resupply the system with bacteria. And in the early game, you can find this bacteria just out and about in the form of stromatolites that you'll find in the shallow water. So there are iron and copper stromatolites which you can use to get your initial resources. Because of course on all of the 3 middle planets, you can start from nothing. You can land with absolutely no gear and build up to launching rockets without any supplies from Nauvis if you so wish. I didn't do that, but you can if you want that challenge for yourself. And the final thing we're making here on our flow-through bus is carbon fiber, special material made on Gleba that is used for some of the fancy new techs that you can get from here. And this is made of carbon and mash. This does currently have spoilage in it, but don't worry, I have spoilage clearing. You always got to put spoilage clearing in your system, because you never know when things are going to back up and spoil. And carbon, by the way, so far you've only seen that being able to be made in space. Carbon is also made from spoilage. So using a biochamber, you can turn spoilage into carbon. 6 spoilage to make carbon. Also need some nutrients, but seeing as we're processing spoilage already, I've just got a little thing that makes nutrients from spoilage right here. And this little loop just chugs away, making as much carbon as we need. And here's where we really get to the key part of the flow-through bus. So after the end of this, everything keeps going. The belts never stop. Everything must run continuously. So it runs all the way back up here. And here is the disposal area. You've got to make sure, in a flow-through model, that however much is coming through your belts can be dealt with somehow. So I've got a few different methods here. We've got some of it splitting off here and running into these things. These are heating towers. These are basically a weird mix of a boiler and a nuclear reactor. So basically it just burns stuff to generate heat. It's 2.5 times as efficient as a boiler. And maybe even more so with Legendary, I'm not sure. But it basically processes a whole bunch of different things. You can see there's a whole big list. You can even burn pentapod eggs in here, and biter eggs. half the things that you get on Gleba can be burned in these. And it can be used to generate a ton of heat, which you can then use to run heat exchangers and steam turbines. Oh, by the way, the water on Gleba is water, in case you were wondering. It is the one other planet that has water. So we run some of it into here, but we only need so much. I've got some wiring to prevent putting in more than is needed, so we limit the temperature here because, oh yeah, nuclear reactors and also heating towers can now output their temperature. Very useful for circuit control. Anything that is left after this goes into these chests, which I refer to, and many people in the playtesting community have been referring to as composters. Basically, you just chuck a bunch of stuff that spoils into a bunch of boxes, and you only extract spoilage. Everything in here will eventually spoil, and when it does, it is removed. It's a composter. Turns everything into spoilage. We're then just, like, voiding spoilage, basically, in these heating towers. We're not limiting the input, so these are at 1000 C, and we're just chucking more spoilage in anyway, just a way to get rid of the spoilage. We're sending some of it off to that processing you saw before, and then there's a couple of other things, because not everything can turn into spoilage, so I'm a little bit worried about this build. It's kind of building up. I'm about to, maybe my disposal system for the end of the bus isn't good enough. And so here's the thing, is we're just destroying all this stuff. There's just various different methods of destruction of our material, and it feels wrong to you know, your average Factorio player that hasn't played Space Age before. But the important thing to learn from a lot of the Space Age mechanics is it doesn't matter if things are destroyed. Like, you have an infinite supply of you know, iron and copper from the lava of Vulcanus. You have a near infinite pile of scrap on Fulgora, giving you late game tech, giving you, like, you know, processing units and low density structure right off the bat. It's okay to destroy the jelly and the mash and the nutrients and even the bioflux, because at the end of the day, it's not about how much you make, it's about how fast you make it. That's the flow-through system, is you have made a river of resources, and the more that you build it up, the faster and wider that river can flow. And when you need something from it, you can dip into the river, and the faster and wider the river is, the more you can get out of it when you dip into it. But when you're not dipping into it, the river flows anyway. It doesn't matter. The trees keep growing. The fruit keeps getting mashed. The jelly keeps getting burned in the heating towers. It keeps getting composted into spoilage, and the spoilage keeps getting basically voided. It's not about, you know, filling a chest with an end resource. It's about making a constant flow of resources that, if you need them, are there, and if you don't need them, just keep going anyway. And that's the trick. That's the key to Gleba. And once you start working with that mindset, everything will just make sense. Everything must always flow. Even the science packs, they also decay. So it's not about getting X amount of science packs to Nauvis. It's getting a constant flow of agricultural science packs to Nauvis. And when you're doing research that requires it, then you're using it at whatever rate it's coming in. But you're not doing agricultural science, in which case it's just going to spoil. And that's okay. You just keep it flowing. You keep the spoilage flowing. You run it into a recycler, or you burn it in a heating tower. You just keep it flowing, always. And that's the trick. And that once you operate on that mindset, then Gleba is no longer as confusing and as annoying as before. Because if you try and build a normal factory, if you just try and plonk down your standard factory, but then just change the recipes to the Gleba recipes, you're just going to have an ocean of spoilage. Everything's going to break, everything's going to back up, everything's going to spoil, and it's all going to jam. And it's not going to work anymore. Flow-through is the way. If you're crazy, you can do what people are calling just-in-time delivery, based on the real-world version of that, where you use a vast amount of circuitry and wiring to make it so that you only generate the resources when there is a demand for them. I think that's insane. You can do it, it works. I think that you have to be mad to do that, though. Anyway, not everything can be disposed of in the same way. So in the case of nutrients, that can be composted, but it cannot be burned. So I'm not running it past the heating towers. I'm running it into its own composter, and then making sure it all turns into spoilage and all just gets burned. Because otherwise it's just going to jam up this belt and slow down the delivery of jelly to the heating towers, which we might need. Because this is now our power grid. We're now running the entire factory off of the waste that it's generating. We've got a bit of solar, but it basically does nothing in comparison to how much these steam turbines are running. And then the last thing is bioflux. Bioflux is an interesting one. You can't burn bioflux, and it takes 2 hours to spoil. You could recycle it back into your system, but it is going to slowly get worse and worse, which means that the things that your system is outputting are slowly going to get worse and worse as well. So it is still better to dispose of it. Now, we do have some storage, because you need bioflux for other planets. But beyond that, it's kind of awkward to get rid of. So you can't burn it. You can't really wait for it to spoil because you will need a vast number of chests to do it. I mean, you could do it that way. You could compost it, but the composting array would be comically large. So what I do is I process it into nutrients. That's one of the recipes. All it requires is bioflux and nutrients, so you can literally, if you want, cycle in the nutrients that you're making in the process. And it's basically just a way to turn it into something that you can get rid of more quickly. You can turn it into nutrients, and then you could compost the nutrients. In this case, I decided to cut out the middleman. I just put the nutrients straight into a recycler, which turns it into spoilage, which then goes into another recycler, which recycles it into 1/4 the spoilage, which I put into another recycler that feeds back into it. So they feed into each other, and basically just annihilate the spoilage. As the thing I should mention is that a recycler does only output 1/4 of what you put into it in terms of you know, anything. So if you put, because spoilage can't be deconstructed into anything lesser, it just turns into spoilage, but 1/4 of the spoilage. In the case of nutrients, it turns into 1/4 of the spoilage that would have been needed to make that amount of nutrients. But yeah, it is worth mentioning with recyclers that there are certain recipes that will not recycle into their base components, but instead recycle into themselves. Anything made in a smelter, for example, steel recycles into steel, not into iron, because basically if it's made in a smelter, it's considered a different deal. Basically, it's got to be a crafting. It's got to be something that's actually been crafted in a machine that does crafting rather than smelting, which is a different category of process, effectively. So do be wary that certain things will not recycle necessarily into the components that make them because of how they are made. And also in things where there are multiple recipes to make them, they're only going to recycle into one of those recipes. Usually the baseline one, rather than, like, you know, the alternate one. Because there are alternate recipes of various things, those are not what the item will recycle into. And usually the alternate recipe is actually using, like, lava anyway, so you can't recycle into liquids. The liquids just go away. Also, a fun feature of the recyclers, by the way, is that when you are recycling something that was made using a liquid, the gas that comes, that vents out, a gas will vent out of the recycler, and it will be the color of the liquid. Brilliant little feature. Love that. Fantastic. Anyway, I think that's more or less my Gleba. Well, there's a couple more bits, actually. We've got, so eventually, you know, the bacteria comes down here, and as it decays into iron ore, it is then taken by normal furnaces. So then we have a sort of normal factory over here, but it's very small, because all you need is a couple things, really. You need to make low-density structure, you need to make processing units, because that's what's needed, along with the rocket fuel made from the Gleba resources, to launch rockets, and then you're good, basically. So we're making a couple things here, you know, a bit of sulfuric acid and stuff like that. We're utilizing the EM plants from Fulgora and everything, and then we've got some logistics-based production down here to do some bits and bobs. A good tip for whenever you're leaving a planet is leave a couple of assemblers making steel chests, provider chests, requester chests, assemblers. I got rid of that on here, I think, but you know, you want an assembler making assemblers, you want assemblers making you know, inserters, and then you have all the materials to use a remote view to make new production on that planet. Just a good tip, so you don't have to constantly shuttle back to a planet because it needs something that you can't do remotely. Just like if you set these up, then you can do a lot more remotely. And by the way, I've completely forgotten to mention a cool new feature that has also been a secret up till now, as far as I'm aware. You can remotely drive tanks. So I'm currently stood on Vulcanus, and I'm driving this tank on Gleba. And on top of that, it has an equipment grid. You can give them personal roboports. And by the way, 6x8, much more convenient than 7x7. The power, I can't remember the name of it. Whichever power suit it is, the power suit Mark 1 is no longer a 7x7 grid. It's a 6x8 grid. So much better, so much more convenient. It's lovely. But basically, when you leave a planet, it's a very good idea to just drop a tank with some personal roboports, and then you can remotely you have a logistics tank. So if you have something that you need to build outside of the roboport range, you can take the tank out there and use the tank to do construction and potentially combat. And this is because the Spidertron is unlocked later. It's a Gleba tech. So you need something in the meantime that can work like a Spidertron, basically. So now tanks are like mini Spidertrons until you actually unlock Spidertrons. Speaking of, oh, hello. I've lost the ability. Oh, I'm still in the tank. I was trying to move around on the map, but I realized I was still on the tank. Silly me. We're now off the tank because I tabbed out. But yeah, speaking of Spidertron, I do have one on this planet, and I thought it would be good to do a quick little wander around and see if we can find ourselves some pentapods. Because the problem is I haven't been able to show off the pentapods because if I turn on... This is my artillery. Again, late game, legendary, things get incredibly powerful. I have a single... Funnily enough, it's a legendary artillery wagon because that's what I had. But I just have a wagon sat in the middle of my factory, and it kills everything well outside the spore range. So spore is basically Gleba's version of pollution, generated by different processes than generate pollution. So pollution isn't important. The pentapods don't care about pollution. And basically spores are released, I believe, by farming and by processing fruit. So they will be drawn to your farming areas instead, and also sometimes your main base as well, rather than the things that, you know, biters will be drawn to, which is an interesting little feature. But yeah, thanks to late game tech, I've basically made it so that the pentapods don't exist anywhere close to where I'm actually generating spores. So if we send a Spidertron outside of that range... Oh, hello. Hang on a minute. Why hasn't the artillery dealt with this? You know what? I bet the chunk wasn't generated, and any second now the artillery's gonna take it out. But we can take a quick look here. So we've got some egg rafts. These are the spawners of the pentapods. And you saw the little wrigglers briefly, and then these are the strafers. They send out these weird little flying things that crash into you. There's little wrigglers. We've got some more strafers over here, bigger base over here. What I really want to find is the big boys. Here we go. This is the Stomper. This guy can just roll up and stomp your base. These guys are pretty tough. I've got this thing crammed with laser defense, so it is slowly working its way through, but it's also getting a bit stomped in the meantime. So yeah, these are quite a challenge to deal with if you go to Gleba first, which is part of why I recommend not doing so. You can deal with them. Like, they are designed so that it's possible. Like, these are evolved. This is big stompers and big strafers and stuff, so they've evolved to their max size. The smaller ones are easier to handle, and I think they've done their best to balance it so that if you do go to Gleba first with just basic novice tech, you can deal with them. But yeah, I mean, my Spidertron's not having too much trouble, even with the powerful ones. So I think balance is all right. It's a personal choice of mine that I don't want to go to Gleba first. Like, now that I get the flow-through idea, I feel a lot more confident about it. I would as a challenge. Oh, here come the artillery shots. Incredibly rapid fire, by the way. Again, late game tech. It's going to be a bad time for these guys. But yeah, I definitely could do Gleba first. And even do Gleba with no supplies. But I'd rather not. Oh, that's funny. This achievement must have been implemented after I implemented my artillery system. Also, the music is excellent right now. The music on all of the planets and space is fantastic. I love it so much. I've turned it up for this. I'm gonna have to turn it down though. It did get a bit intense there. But that's my Gleba. That's basically the whole deal. So yeah, this is my old flow-through bus. Look at this spaghetti. Look at this disaster here. So eventually I hit the speed limitations of this system and decided to build this new neat system. Now I knew what I was doing. You can never stop me building a bus. And that is Gleba, right. Oh yeah, also, by the way, biochambers are made with pentapod eggs, just for a bit of extra challenge. So I've got a little walled-off system here, because this one is not as this one doesn't have the same safety record as my science production for Gleba, for pentapod egg hatches. Pentapod eggs hatch all the time in this system. Quality grinding items with spoilage is also a very interesting challenge, but I have managed to do it. We've got a lot of legendary biochambers now. You can't stop me. Right. For reals this time, that's Gleba. Now, onto the final planet. And here we are on the final planet, Aquilo. Also known as We Have C-Block at Home. So, Aquilo is a barren ocean planet with some small patches of iceberg on them, basically. The only resources you can find here are liquids. And this is the one planet where it is a requirement to have support from the other planets, or at least from space. That's the idea of this one, that like, in order to get to this planet, you have to have gone through all of the other planets. So by now you have a space-based logistics network, and now it's time to face a planet challenge where like you have to integrate your space-based logistics into the planet. You have to supply materials to here, you have to take things from here. So you start with a very small patch of land, but you are able to harvest some chunks of ice to basically make some ice platforms to start expanding the space, and from there you can start to harvest materials to make more ice platforms. So there are basically 4 liquid-ish resources that you can harvest. Offshore pump, of course. Always remember to use an offshore pump. These oceans are not water. They are ammoniacal solution. You can also get straight up crude oil, which is quite funny. That like just a normal-ass crude oil is here. And it's got a new animation as well now. It bubbles, which is cool. And I believe that's in all locations. And then over here, there is, I believe this, yeah, lithium brine. And over here, I conveniently had one single deposit of fluorine, which is a gas. So, the liquid gas is sort of, you run them through pipes. You run them through liquid pipes. So it's the same basic deal. But yeah, this is kind of what it looks like out here. Just little island. So you get a nice little starting island, and then there's just everything else is just tiny fragments. Also, bear in mind, this is well, that's concreted, but my Aquilo is an old map gen version, so it actually looks better now. There's a lot more I think surface details, and the rocks look cooler and stuff like that. So my Aquilo is like the basic version, and the version you'll get will have more cooler visuals on it. But yes, the interesting mechanic about this planet is that it is frozen, and if you just build a machine here, it will freeze. And let me just like have the bots plonk down an assembler, and every machine in the game that freezes has a special frozen texture, which is quite cool. A lot of effort gone to like have the like built up snow on the edges and stuff, and all that. So the people who theorized were right. The Christmas message that they posted a while back that had like the frozen factory with the Christmas tree in the middle, all of those textures existed because they were making them for Aquilo. So in order for machines to run, every machine must be touching through an adjacent tile, and that includes the corners, must be touching a heat pipe. Touching, not just near, touching. So the heat pipe's basically each tile on either side of a heat pipe is the ice is melted, and so you have to be that close. to be able to operate, and it leads to interesting challenges in factory design, because you have to work out how to make all of your normal builds, except now you've somehow got to incorporate heat pipes into all of it, because you can't have underground heat pipes or anything like that. Heat pipes cannot go through a building, so you've got to find a way to have this snaking network of heat pipes connect to everything, and then the buildings work within that. You have a lot of underground belts and underground pipes and stuff like that, and it's a very interesting thing, because you have to rethink all your builds. You can't just plonk down a blueprint here. None of them will work. Not a one of them. You've got to work out how to integrate heat pipes into your designs to make anything work. Even the steam turbines, even full of hot steam, will need to be unfrozen so that they can start to turn. It's interesting, but I understand why they did it from a mechanical standpoint and not a, even if it doesn't make sense on the face of it. But yes, the heating towers are very, very useful for this. So I've got some over here. The heating towers, you unlock them on Gleba, and then I believe you specifically need that tech to unlock Aquilo. But I think you need all the planets anyway to unlock Aquilo. But yeah, the heating towers are a fantastic way to get kickstarted on Aquilo. But if you want like some properly solid, robust, long-term heating, you just go for a good old nuclear reactor. So the funny thing is, I don't run these steam turbines anymore. These used to provide power, but at this point, the only function of these nuclear reactors is to heat the heat pipes to keep the factory warm. And these two reactors run the whole show. There's our rockets launching. On this one I have a dedicated science rocket, so I've just got them directly inserting the science packs into the silo, and this doesn't take requests from space platforms. The reason for this being that roboports and like construction and logistics bots barely function on Aquilo. I forget what the reasoning is. It's gravity or atmosphere or something, but basically the functionality of robots, if we go to the space map, we can see. So yeah, where is it? Yeah, robot energy usage is 5 times as much as normal, which means that they have to stop to charge in 1/5 of the distance or time that they travel. So you'll constantly see robots like do a couple jobs and then have to like drag themselves back to a roboport. So you basically are like, it's a way to stop you from just being like, oh, I need heat pipes touching everything. Okay, I'm just gonna work out a build where heat pipes touch logistics-based production and then just print the same thing in a grid forever. Now it's like, no, you can't use bots in any reasonable way for like, large-scale bot-based production. You have to use belts, and you gotta find a way to make those belts work with heat pipes. And by the way, every single belt needs to be touching a heat pipe. This little heat pipe here is the only reason this underground belt here works. But yeah, let's get into the production lines. So first things first, you want to pump out the ammoniacal solution and put it straight into chemical plants to separate it into ammonia and ice. And then you can immediately use the ammonia and ice to make ice platforms. Now, if you... the way the ratios work, you end up with more ammonia left at the end of this. So this is like... if you make as many ice platforms as you can, if you turn all your ice into ice platforms, you'll have excess ammonia left at the end of it. Next up, you want to melt some ice. From there into water. Next up, you want to turn the ammonia and the crude oil into solid fuel, so it's an alternate recipe for solid fuel. And from there you can combine the solid fuel with the water from the ice and some more ammonia to make rocket fuel. So there you go, you can provide rocket fuel for your rocket launches, but you can't make processing units or low density structure. You have to ship those in from off-world. But at least you can make rocket fuel. And then you can use the solid fuel or the rocket fuel to run the heating towers. Now in this case, these heating towers are actually a system for burning off excess ammonia. Because there's a few more processes that use ammonia and use ice in various proportions. And so sometimes you end up with an excess of ice and sometimes with an excess of ammonia. If there's an excess of ice, I start making ice platforms, because then I will, use up more ice than ammonia. If I have too many ice platforms, then I void them with the tried and tested recycler method, where The first recycler turns the ice platforms into ice, and then these just annihilate the ice. And then if there's too much ammonia, then these heating towers start to pick up the solid fuel. And that uses up the ammonia, because ice isn't used in this process. So it's just a way to keep balance at this point. This is a kickstarting system, because the big threat on Aquilo is everything freezing. Because if everything freezes, the only way to fix it is to land there personally and get things kickstarted. Unless you have an independent system on Aquilo that is keeping itself unfrozen. So in this case, this is a separate power grid that can feed this inserter for this. So if the factory starts to freeze, then I can feed some of this emergency rocket fuel supply into this heating tower to get some more heat going. However, if it's fully frozen, this inserter will freeze, and then there's nothing I can do. Interesting, the power grid is struggling. Or is it? Oh no, that's this. It's on a separate grid. I just told you it's on a separate grid. I'm being a derp. It's fine. Yeah, we're running this thing off fusion. We're totally fine. This fusion reactor can generate 100 megawatts if we need to, and we're usually using about 10. So we are just fine there. So yeah, so once we've done all that, we're heading down here, and it's time to do some lithium processing. So we use the lithium brine, we combine that with ammonia and some holmium plate, which is from Fulgora, by the way, to make some lithium. So you have to be shipping in holmium plate from Fulgora to keep this process running. Then you could use a good old furnace to turn the lithium into lithium plate. From there we get into some fun liquid stuff. So you can use solid fuel, lithium, fluorine, and ammonia to make hot fluoroketane. This is your cooling liquid. Nothing uses hot fluoroketane, but we can cool it. And I haven't even gotten to the cooling tower, but we will in a second. So hot fluoroketane can be turned into an equal amount of cold fluoroketane. So you just have to process it. You just have to have a machine that processes it. You can't put productivity in this, so you always get out the exact amount that you put in. So you can make cooling loops this way. And then finally we get to the science pack. So good old ice, lithium plate, and the cold fluoroketane makes the cryogenic science pack, and some hot fluoroketane. So you end up using some up. So you put in 6 cold fluoroketane, you get out 3 hot. So some of it is being expended in the process, but you then have to cycle the hot stuff and cool it again, because there's no use for the hot coolant, obviously. And so let's talk about the cooling tower. Although sometimes I call it the cooling tower. It's the cryo plant. It is the cryogenic plant, but I sometimes want to call it the cooling tower because I've got heating tower on the brain. But this is the special machine for Aquilo. This one does not have an inherent quality bonus like all of the other machines for the other planets. The reason being the cooling loop. They wanted to make sure that you that's like if you're cooling coolant, you keep an equal amount of it. You don't end up getting more by doing that, because otherwise you could just generate an infinite amount. If you have a process that turns cold into hot, and then you can turn hot into more cold, then you have infinite fluoroketane. Doesn't work. And the fusion generator outputs hot fluoroketane. So no inbuilt productivity bonus on the plant, but what that means instead is they can cram a few more module slots into it. So it has, as you might have noticed, 8 module slots, which is insane for quality, because it means if you put in 3 legendary quality legendary quality level 3 quality modules, and you put in 8 of them, you get just shy of plus 50% quality, which means half the things this makes are going to be normal, half are going to be uncommon, though within that 10% are going to be rare, within that 10% are going to be epic, within that 10% are going to be legendary. No matter what your initial quality percentage is, the later qualities are always a 10% chance within that. Bear in mind, because you might look at this and think, oh, 50% chance of normal, and then 25 of uncommon, and 12.5 of rare. It doesn't work like that. It's always, after the first step, it's always 10% chance of it being more. But yeah, it means that quality grinding anything made in a cryo plant is relatively easy. You don't have to expend that much in the way of resources. because it's, like, the quality jumps up so rapidly. But this is a neat little system I made for quality grinding with a single machine, by the way. So this machine can do any quality of recipe using these combinators. So this one is like, if there's enough processing units, superconductors, lithium plates, and refined concrete to make a cryo plant, and the machine isn't working, tell it to make cryo plants. And it's basically, it's getting it from this chest, and also the inserters in the machine itself to make sure this doesn't matter. This was actually, I thought I needed this, but I didn't, so ignore that. I could have just made a direct connection. But basically, if there's enough material to make the machine, then it tells it to make it, and then the same for quality. So if there is uncommon qualities of all the items needed in the right amounts, and the machine's not working, then output the uncommon quality cryoplant recipe. And then here we have a selector combinator, which is a new kind of combinator they've introduced, which is able to select, you know, one of various inputs depending on different conditions, and do things with them. I've barely begun to scratch the surface of what a selector combinator can do. I'm bad with combinators at the best of times. This DLC has got me into combinators because they've become so much more useful, because now you can put and or functions within a single combinator. You don't need to make a forest of combinators to go through various functions. You can now do so much just in a single one. This array, this would have been like, you know, let me think, like 30-ish combinators before? Something ridiculous like that. Now it's 5 and a decider, a selector. This isn't relevant. So yeah, 5 and a selector. So yeah, this selects a random one of the inputs that these are outputting, and tells it to do it, so it doesn't get multiple inputs at once and get confused. It will output one of them, and then you can say how often it checks for a new input to select an output. And you can set this timer to like how many ticks it takes to load up the machine, so that it is not interrupted while it's loading. So I need to change this, to be honest, because I think when I first put this in, you couldn't make this more than 255 ticks, but now you can. So yeah, it's a neat little system for just rapidly, well, slowly quality grinding with a single machine, because at one point, you know, tier 3 legendary quality modules were hard to come by. I didn't want to be building a, you know, a huge array of them for every different quality level. We've got more quality grinders over here, though funnily enough they don't actually work right now, because as it currently stands, there is what is supposedly a bug, I've been told by the devs, where certain things recycle into themselves that shouldn't. So fusion reactors and fusion generators at the time of recording, I should stress at the time of recording, recycle into themselves, not to their ingredients. This is also true for something else. Oh yeah, back on Nauvis. But yeah, right now you can't... this quality grinder doesn't actually work, because I'm generating the final product, and then if I recycle it, it just makes itself again. But there's a quarter chance that something will come out, and then within that, a quarter chance that it will be higher quality. I've still thrown some things in the recycler anyway, because I could still get higher qualities that way, but it's a much more resource-intensive way of doing it. Not advised. I'm trying to get a legendary fusion reactor, you see. I'm so close. I've got 2 legendary generators. So all I need is a legendary reactor, and I can make a full little array that is 2.5 times as powerful as a normal one. So I can generate 250 megawatts from a single array like this. Okay, this outputs the hot fluoroketane. This then cools it. You can see it's slowly filling, because we're using power very slowly. And then when it hits 10, it'll turn that into 10 cold, and that'll go into this this tank. And then I had a system that would like top up the tank if it needed, but it should never need topping up again. This can be a closed loop now. All you have to do is put in the actual fusion cells, which are made of holmium plate, lithium plate, and ammonia. And I'm shipping these all over the system to run various fusion-powered space platforms at this point. But yeah, that is more or less Aquilo. Basically, there's more things that you can make from on Aquilo, but I've made them elsewhere. If we go back to our crafting menu, so all this stuff, you can also make quantum processors, but this is a merging of all the planets, except Gleba. No Gleba for some reason. But processing units, tungsten carbide, superconductors, lithium plates, and cold fluoroketane can all be used to make a quantum processor, which is basically the next step of circuit. beyond processing unit. It's upgrading a processing unit to a quantum processing unit, effectively. But you can make these anywhere, so I'm making them back on Nauvis because I've got to combine all these resources from all these planets. I might as well do it at the hub of all of my worlds. And it's also how you get the railgun turret and the handheld railgun. But again, those can be made on Nauvis, so I did. Also, an interesting thing about the fusion reactor and fusion generator and the cryo plant is that these can all be made in space. You see the crafted on indicator there, Aquilo, or a space platform. Basically, it says that these only require a certain low pressure, lower than any of the inner planets, but, you know, if it's low pressure that you need, space works just as well as Aquilo, so you can make them in space. You can't, however, make the cryo science pack in space. That requires the specific pressure that you find on Aquilo. So no shenanigans there. Though honestly, you wouldn't want to do it in space anyway, because you have to use fluoroketane. It would be a huge pain to be constantly shipping up fluoroketane barrels so that you could then cycle them. You could do it. I do fly fluoroketane barrels as it stands, because I need it for the quantum processors and a few other things back on Nauvis. But yeah, that is Aquilo. And speaking of back on Nauvis, it is finally time to return and take a tour of my Nauvis and show you how I've implemented all of the things that I've got on all of the other planets. And so here we are, back on Nauvis. We're here at our landing pad. Important note, you can only build one landing pad per planet. So make sure it's somewhere where you can make good use of it. But you basically fill this thing with requests. Whatever's on board, whenever there's a space platform in orbit that has something that this thing's requesting, it'll drop it down and fill up this inventory here. There's a lot of excess ammo from times when I've, you know, done some redesigning on a platform and the ammo's been shunted into the cargo hold, and then I've, you know, been like, I'll just throw it on the surface and we'll deal with it some other time. But yeah, so this collects it all, and then this works as a provider, so the factory can request anything out of this inventory, and that's how you do your loop between the surface and space platforms, is you send it up with rockets, you bring it down to the cargo landing pad. Dropping things to the surface is free, the platform just does it. One thing to bear in mind, and something that has tripped up some people, is that you want to have a lot of these cargo bays. And you might think, well, why don't I just efficiently use the space in the thing? And like, as it is, I'm using a tiny fraction of the cargo capacity. I'm not building the cargo base for cargo capacity. I'm building it for throughput. You see, whenever an item is dropped from space, there's a little animation where one of these little bays opens, and the pod drops in. And the problem is that this animation does limit the rate at which things can be dropped from space. So you may run into issues where you're trying to drop more stuff from space than can be dropped. Especially when I've got a space science pack dropper constantly dropping like individual science packs basically, and I've got a calcite dropper constantly dropping individual pieces of calcite. Sometimes the other platforms can't get a word in. So you've got to make sure there's enough cargo bays that there's always some free ones that can do the receiving items animation. They ought to be connected to the pad, which is why they are, by this tiny section here. This little branch, and then it just spreads out into this ocean over here, because I wanted to be able to rapidly pull science packs out using inserters when I could. So it's a bit silly, but it's important. And also, there's a certain limitation to the rate at which space platforms can drop items based on, I think, how many cargo bays are on board as well. I think more cargo bays on board a platform will allow it to do more dropping item animations at once at the same time. Also something to note, you can't insert into cargo bays or out of cargo bays, only the thing it's connected to. So on space platforms, you've got to insert into the hub and pull out of the hub, and the same goes for the cargo landing pad. You can't use inserters on these because it would be an infinite chest. You could just make a snake of these that went around your factory, and it would just be one super chest that held every item in your factory. It would ruin things a little bit. It would break the game. So this is my landing pad. This is where I pull in my science packs and all kinds of other random things. You've got different kinds of tungsten. I've got tungsten belts coming in here. Like tungsten belts are delivered to the entire system. And I noticed there isn't like that all other kinds of belt are extinct. Only green belts everywhere, all the time. I also forgot to talk about the stack inserters properly, but yeah, the stack inserters are also made on Gleba. They use the carbon fiber. And I've also got quality grinding of them going on, so I'm starting to implement legendary stack inserters around the place. So like the rotation speed of this is 800 and something, this is 2000 and something. It's good, it's good. Like when everything else is legendary, you start to run into the limitations of inserters. No matter how fast they go, you need more. You need more speed. So I've been quality grinding the inserters. But this is my science array. We're already getting into weird and wacky new things. This is the new science lab. It's horrifying. When you arrive back on Nauvis, particularly after being on Gleba, you're gonna go through perhaps a bit of a crisis. Or maybe you won't. But you'll definitely experience some "are we the baddies" moments, because let me explain how this comes to pass. So one of the things that you make on Gleba is capture bot rockets, which can be used to capture biter spawners. So you head out into the wilderness with a rocket launcher and some capture bot rockets, and you find a biter base, and you fight the biters, and then you fire the rocket at the spawner, and it shuts the spawner down. And basically takes control of it and builds this weird assemblage around it to basically encourage it to produce biter eggs. And you basically slave this thing to you. You take control of it and you turn it into a biter egg manufacturer. You feed it with bioflux, and as long as you do, it just churns out biter eggs. It also, very conveniently, holds on to them. So biter eggs spoil. They spoil into big biters in 30 minutes, as I mentioned. But when they're in the spawner, they don't spoil. So you can just leave them in there and only pull them out using wiring conditions when you know that you can use them to make something. But yes, this is kind of horrifying to watch. There's something deeply unsettling to me about the idea of like plugging in all these machinery components to this biological being and basically bending it to your will. And the thing that, you know, after the biters have been fighting you all this time, and after you've been destroying their world, now you've taken control of the biters themselves, and you're making them part of the factory. It's horrifying. We're the baddies. If anyone was ever not sure, we're the baddies. But yeah, so once you've done that to a biter spawner out in the wild, and you've harvested some biter eggs from it, you can then use the biter eggs to make your own captive biter spawners. With a bit of fluoroketane and a bit of uranium, so a combination of Aquilo and Nauvis in the mix there, along with the original Gleba influence of the capture bot rocket. You can quality grind these. This is the other recipe where it's kind of broken right now, and it recycles into itself instead of its constituent components. And you know what? That's fine by me, because the constituent component spoils. I don't want it to break down into biter eggs, especially not higher quality biter eggs. I much prefer it turning directly into a spawner. Interesting thing about the captive biter spawner is it itself spoils into a behemoth biter, which is a fascinating little mechanic. So I have an alarm set up here that will flash when I have a legendary spawner. So every spawner that gets made gets thrown into this recycler, unless it's legendary, in which case it stays, and then the alert goes off telling me that a legendary captive biter spawner has been produced, and that means I can upgrade all my spawners to legendary, because they will produce at 2.5 times the speed for the same bioflux input, so you can get more biter eggs for your buck. It's a good system. Right now this is turned off, because all my spawners are legendary that I want to be. But yeah, you need the eggs to make more spawners, and then you can put them throughout your factory instead of relying on them out in the wilderness. You need them to make overgrowth soil, not the artificial soil, but the overgrowth soil, the next stage of soil. Oh, there's my... And here's where we get into the fun shenanigans you can get up to when you take these machines back home. So these are cryoplants. Their productivity is plus 200% due to all of the legendary modules in them. They themselves are legendary, so they run at 2.5 times speed. Then I have legendary beacons with legendary speed modules in them. and efficiency modules, which means the final result of this, it actually is, I need more efficiency modules, it turns out. I think the balance has changed on these. So like originally when I set these up, I think they were, you know, 20% of their normal power usage, but as it is, this is currently nearly 4 times the power usage. But this thing is running at plus 700% speed. And that's plus 700% of the 2.5 base speed, as I understand it. And its high productivity. So these things are running at a comical pace, and the animation, therefore, is also running at a comical pace. Get used to this stuff. So yeah, biter eggs are also used to make these, which are the biolabs. So the labs are basically biter spawners that have been converted into laboratories. So this is the final stage of, like, biomechanical horror that we inflict upon the world. Is this nightmare thing, this pulsing thing with veins. It looks like a combination of a biter spawner and a brain that we're massaging to think about the science that we want to do. Also, this thing, by the way, is running at plus 6,956% speed, with a productivity of plus 400%. And the special feature of the biolab is science pack drain. Works just like mining drill drain, like resource drain on mining drills on the big miners. The only difference is that higher quality on biolabs does not increase the, does not reduce the science pack usage. So 50% is what you get. Basically, as soon as you're using these labs, you're getting twice as much science for your science packs. Then if you combine it with productivity, you're getting even more. And it's got 4 module slots, so we can immediately boost the productivity by 100% because of the combined 25% of 4 legendary productivity 3s. And on top of that, the final tech that we get from the Prometheum science packs is research productivity. Every step of this increases research productivity by a further 10%. It does make sure to scale the cost faster than it reduces the cost through the existence of itself, so don't worry about it going infinite, but it is a way to make your science go way, way further. So as it stands, with the 50% science pack drain and the plus 400% productivity, which means 500% total productivity, these labs are generating 10 science per science pack, which is not too bad. And of course this thing is running at plus 7,000% speed. Unfortunately, the animation doesn't speed up at the same time. There was a building, there was a brief time in the there was a brief time during the playtest where there was basically the captive biter spawner that you made yourself did something different. It could be used to manufacture biter eggs, but it could also be used for a couple of oil processes and also for making novice science packs. So I've had to rebuild this twice. I tore this down, made it with the captive biter spawners, then they de-implemented those, so I had to build this again. Because they implemented the biolab instead. On that machine, the animation sped up with the speed of the machine, and it was a beautiful sight. It was ridiculous. But they got rid of it, possibly because we were going to be overclocking these things to plus 7,000%, and that might be a little bit too speedy. More things you can do with biter eggs are, all the way over here, making productivity 3. So productivity 3s are made using biter eggs. All of the level 3 modules use a different resource to make. So we can go through them all. This is my big module quality grinding setup, by the way. It's all shut down because everything's maxed out now. I've got everything at the numbers I want. These are set to shut off when I have 500 legendary modules. 500 legendary level 3 modules. It's a bit insane. So yeah, we've got an array here that's just making all the level 1s with circuits and advanced circuits. Then we've got an array that turns them all into level 2s with advanced circuits and processing units. Then we split them off. So quality module 3s require superconductors from Fulgora. Efficiency module 3s require spoilage from Gleba. Speed module 3s require tungsten carbide from Vulcanus. And productivity 3s require biter eggs from Nauvis. So each of the 4 core planets is used to make a different kind of module now. And you do need the higher quality ones. So yeah, in a couple of my quality grinding setups that utilize eggs, we do have higher quality eggs in the mix. They've all hatched by now. We've got a lot of lasers to deal with them, and they have. Oh, and also, sometimes these things go... If you don't feed the captive biter spawners with bioflux, by the way, if they starve, they break free. But I've set up a rocket turret loaded with captive bot rockets over here to recapture them if that happens. But a fun thing about it is, as I understand it, if a legendary captive biter spawner breaks free of your control and you don't recapture it, I think it becomes a legendary spawner, which can then spawn legendary biters, which can then make legendary bases, and it might be possible to have a legendary biter breakout on Nauvis. I'm not sure about this, to be clear. I don't actually know. I've heard it might be possible. I don't know if anyone has actually confirmed that it works that way, but it's possible that mechanically you can induce, or perhaps accidentally induce, a breakout of legendary biters. And there are legendary variants of worms and spawners and spitters, which lends to the idea that maybe there is a way for that to happen. And they are very powerful, and you don't want to be dealing with them, so it could be an interesting challenge. You could do a legendary biter challenge, where you unleash them on the world, and then all the biters end up being legendary, and you've got to deal with infinitely more dangerous bases. The ultimate death world. If it's not possible in-game, then you could always make a scenario. But I think it might be a thing. I haven't dared try it. I haven't dared release the biters into the world to see what would happen. But someone could do the science. Someone could definitely do the science. But yeah, this is my quality grinding setup for modules. Some people call it quality cycling and stuff like that. Quality recycling, different terms for it. But basically, you know, all these machines, we only do it on the final stage. You can do intermediate stage quality stuff, it just gets complicated very quickly, and so this is the simplest way, is you just do quality on the final item, and then you just recycle it and make it and recycle it and make it over and over till you get the quality that you want. So these things are full of quality modules. They've got 5 slots, so that adds up to 31% chance of higher quality. So what that means is that the, 69%, nice, will be normal, 31% will be uncommon, 10% of those will be rare, 10% of the rares will actually be epic, 10% of the epics will actually be legendary. That's how the probabilities work, that like once you do the initial, once it jumps up a quality, there's then a 10% chance to do it again, and a 10% chance to do it again until it hits legendary. So it ultimately means that the chance of legendary is really, really small, it's a fraction of a percent, but it does mean that any craft can generate a legendary. Once it's done this and it's generated whatever it's generated, the vast majority are going to be basic. They are then unloaded into these recyclers. These recyclers output the constituent components, sometimes the same quality as before, sometimes not. You only get 25% back, but of that 25%, because of the modules, are going to be higher quality. You then cycle back the basic ones and you send on the higher quality ones. So we've got uncommon in here. Then we've got some machines that make just uncommon, and they're full of quality modules, so sometimes they'll make epic, and sometimes they'll make rare, and so on. We've got one making epic, we've got one making rare, and then we've got one making legendary. Remember, you don't need to put modules in your legendary one, because you're already legendary. There's nowhere further to go. If it's something that can take productivity modules, you can put productivity modules in, but in this case you can't, so I just don't have any modules in this thing at all. They do have the built-in plus 50% productivity module, my mouth got away from me there. They do have the plus 50% productivity though, so you are getting more bang for your buck out of this whole thing the entire time as well. You're always getting more resources than you're actually putting in. 50% more from every step of the process. And that's how these work. And then I'll show you, this is my quality grinder array for just anything that I don't need like rapidly, I just need eventually. So these things don't run fast, but they do ultimately get the job done. 1 recycler, 5 machines, basic, uncommon, rare, epic, legendary. You put 1 requester leading into the basic one, but then also the output of the recycler can feed into it. So you request, it makes the machine, it feeds into here. You set the qualities that you want to put into the recycler. The materials come out, they feed into the various chests. The basic stuff ends up feeding into here, and it means that, you know, if this is full, then no more requests are going to happen, and basically the chest won't fill up. And then also you will slowly gather higher quality items, which can then be used to have a higher chance of getting even higher quality. And I just have this for everything that I want to have higher quality. Mech armor, all of the different, personal equipment. I even did it for reactors and heat exchangers and steam turbines at one point. I ended up not really using them because I switched to fusion, but I thought I would need them. Oh yeah, there's a new item, by the way, for the suit. The tool belt, which is a 1x3. It's flat. Gives you more inventory space. Incredibly useful for the awkward, odd-numbered amounts of slots you get in suits, because, of course, on higher quality suits, they have larger equipment grids. By one tile at a time, so you're always going to end up with suit and quality combinations where there is an odd number of tiles widthwise and heightwise, and so widthwise you could always use batteries to fill the gap. Now heightwise you can use tool belts to fill the gap. Yeah, mostly it was personal equipment, to be honest. Anything that goes on a rocket, so the grabbers, the thrusters, the cargo pods, the ore crushers, so everything runs quicker. Grabbers in particular are incredibly powerful at higher levels, because at higher qualities they get more storage, they get a larger collection area, their arms move quicker, and they get more arms, so it's a huge multiplier basically on how effective they are. It's like the basic collector has 1 arm, the legendary has 6 arms. It's a huge boost. Spidertrons, of course. We've got I got a lot of legendary Spidertrons. I maybe let this thing run too long, but I can deconstruct a legendary Spidertron to get a legendary fish, and then eat that fish to get an achievement, because there is one for that. And then yeah, just a lot of buildings like heating towers, assemblers, chemical plants, all kinds of turrets. It only boosts the range, but that's still useful. There's the artillery trains. That's why I'm using those, not because, like, if I'm gonna quality grind an artillery, I might as well make an artillery train so I can move it if I need to. And I in fact do have 1 artillery train. There's the circle for it that just travels around various outposts on my wall and takes out biters in the distance. Now well beyond my pollution range. And then over here, there's also some quality grinders for certain things that can be made using EM plants, so solar panels, accumulators. Though this I don't actually have requesting. This just requests any accumulators that come Nauvis' way and makes them legendary. Beacons can be done this way, so more efficient, and all kinds of power poles as well. And you can use EM plants for circuits, so I switched my circuit production, my advanced circuit production, my processing unit production, all to EM plants. We should go to the beginning of the line, really, because over here I have foundries. I'm running all of my stuff off of foundries. So I have that calcite ship that drops calcite in, and then we combine that with ore. Everything's stacked, by the way. The belts are all stacked 4 high using stack inserters from loading the trains and everything. We're turning it all into molten iron and molten copper with incredible productivity. So every single one of these is 150% extra productivity. We're doing, that's how we make all of our copper plates, all of our iron plates. Here's copper wire, which I've also hooked up to EM plants that are making circuits. So all of our circuits come from EM plants that are fed with wire made from foundries, with just stacking levels of productivity at every step of the way. We're using foundries for steel, foundries for gears, pipes. Oh wow, I've got some epic modules in there. That takes me back. The old days, before Aquilo. Pipes, underground pipes, that's how we're making our low-density structure, that's how we're making our concrete. And the only thing that we're using smelters for is stone brick, because you still need it for that. That's it. To feed into the concrete production. And to make walls for military science. Here we've got our old military science setup, which has just been like bootstrapped to make it better over time. Everything's so once the bus was just here, and then I've ripped out a lot of things that have now been replaced by foundries and EM plants and moved them to different locations, and moved some things up to the top of this bus once I knew what the width of it would be. We have a belt of wire now, which once would have been the highest of heresy as far as I'm concerned, and now it just makes sense to have belts of wires, because you can stack them. So that, two green belts of stacked wires is the... Oh, I think I said it wrong before. I think I said that, one stacked green belt is the equivalent of 10 blue belts. I realize that is incorrect. It is the equivalent of over 5 blue belts. I think 5.3 blue belts? So it's 2 stacked green belts are the equivalent of 10, I think, 0.6 blue belts, if I remember what my calculations were. I did get that wrong before in Fulgora. My apologies to everyone who's written a comment already before they got to the end of this video about that. But yeah, it's weird the things you end up with belts of in this situation. So yeah, just everything, a lot of things are moduled up, a lot of things are beaconed up. A lot of things just switch to better plants. There's even some more things that I could switch over because biochambers, just in a recent update, got made so that they can be used on Nauvis to do certain crafts. So over my oil setup, I need to switch to some biochamber-based production potentially, as long as I can get a supply of nutrients, and there is a way to do that. Yeah, this is all my production. Oh, and here's my quality grinding for various different types of inserter, so that I can slowly phase out the old inserter types in my factory. Everything is slowly turning legendary. Most things are, but there's a couple of stragglers, like turrets out in the wilderness and inserters, and a couple of my radars, because radars get higher range for higher quality. It's a couple more things that I need to do. Also, this is my belt recycler. Because I'm making tungsten belts on Vulcanus, it didn't make sense to ship the blue belts over there to turn into tungsten belts, so this thing requests all the different kinds of belts except the one that's used in green science. Oh yeah, and also mining drills, because I don't need those anymore. And runs them all through recyclers until they are reduced to basic components that are then integrated into the bus. And here we have our fish farm. You can breed fish now. Fish also spoil now. Fish spoil in 2 hours. But there's a craft that you can do in a chemical plant that breeds fish. So 20 fish, 10 tree seeds, and 1,000 water makes 30 fish. Slap some productivity in it to make it a bit more, put some limiters on it to make sure it doesn't go crazy. And tree seeds, you say? Yes, over here is my tree farm. This is my Nauvis tree farm, which is used to manufacture tree seeds en masse. Why do I need tree seeds aside from making fish? Because this is a lot of tree seeds if I'm just, you know, making a couple fish every hour. That is because of my pollution ablative forests. I've built artificial forests all around the outskirts of my factory area to hold back the pollution and prevent it reaching the biter bases. Because of this, I no longer get biter attacks, except when my artillery train takes out biters and they decide to take revenge. But I've just run around planting seeds all along the boundaries. There's a couple gaps where it hasn't been needed, but this stuff holds back the pollution pretty well. Sometimes these get overwhelmed, but if the rate that I'm making pollution drops, then the pollution ends up pulling back again and the forest recovers. So these forests died at some point and were completely overrun, and then my pollution generation reduced and they came back again. This forest over here has never died. I call this the RSI forest because it hurt to build this many trees. But you can see the near edge of this has died, but further out it has held. And this forest has never failed where many others have. And it basically keeps my pollution at bay. Here's me attempting to make like rows of trees. And just like running around in straight lines, placing them. There's my normal squiggle method where I haven't gone over it enough times to hide the squiggles. And here we've had to make very deep forests to keep the pollution in check, and it's these have kind of failed. These ones have a greater burden to bear. The pollution has overtaken some of these, but they've weakened it enough that when it hits the natural forest a little bit further out, they do stop it. So it has worked out okay, and this keeps the pollution far, far away from where the biters actually are. And it's kept my Nauvis safe. So artificial forests are a viable method for keeping pollution in check. Oh, and here's look at this. The oil overlay. Isn't it beautiful? Seeing all the different connections in place. So yeah, my oil setup's pretty standard. So yeah, oil cracking can be done by biolabs, biochambers even. So I could switch these to biochambers if I wanted and feed them with nutrients that I make from fish, because you make nutrients from fish. Or is it make nutrients from tree seeds these days? They keep changing it, you see. Or is it both? Hang on. I'm still on Vulcanus, by the way. That's right, you can make nutrients from fish. You can also make nutrients from biter eggs. And you breed the fish from trees. Also, there's back and forward buttons, by the way. Mouse 4 and 5 are now back and forward, so you can jump back to wherever you were before in remote view. And in Factorio, which I haven't even talked about, which is brilliant. But yeah, here we are. We're using cryoplants to make sulfur and sulfuric acid. And I just need one machine. Beacon to hell. This thing runs at 400% speed with a productivity of 300%. So plus 300%, plus 200%. Just with a couple of beacons. Just everything's legendary. Same goes for plastic. One machine generates... This literally generates, I believe, a saturated, stacked green belt of plastic. So I just need the one machine. And I think rocket fuel can now be done with biochambers too. Explosives can also be done with cryolabs. So you can basically, like, after every planet, you can go back to Nauvis and you can overhaul your Nauvis production to make it more efficient, utilizing the things you've got from each of the planets. And everything just stacks up to make things more and more effective. The one thing that is unique to Nauvis is the nuclear. If you want uranium, you gotta get it on Nauvis. And the last thing we have here is our fusion reactor. So fusion reactors have the adjacency bonus that fission reactors do, but you can stagger them like this. You can put them in basically a triangle formation, which opens up wonderful new possibilities about how you can arrange them to get the maximum reactor efficiency. But basically, there's two ways of doing it, which is either you do this chain here, that's the quickest way, and this is kind of sneaky, is like, you're meant to do these fascinating fractal arrays of generators, but you can just chain the generators off the fronts of each other, so I can just run them in a chain like this. What I should have done was have it zigzag a little bit, though. Would have made blueprinting easier. But yeah, basically, the more bonus you have, the more of these you can chain, the more power you're getting out of it, for the amount of fusion power cells that you're using. And here I've got one massively overclocked cryoplant working to cycle the coolant. And this powers my entire Nauvis. It's more than enough. This thing generates 3.4 gigawatts, and we're using barely 1 gigawatt at any one particular moment right now. Because you can go so crazy with legendary beacons, with legendary modules, that you can make everything go incredibly fast and also have minimum power consumption. So this thing uses, 20% of the power that it should, because I've filled it with an equal amount of speed and efficiency. Also, funnily enough, legendary speed modules are actually make you more efficient, because the speed increases more than the energy consumption. The energy consumption stays standard at plus 70%, while the speed when you get to legendary is plus 125%. So you actually are more efficient this way. And by the way, another snag that a lot of people are hitting. Pay attention to the tooltips. Speed modules reduce quality. Look at that, minus 2.5% quality. For speed module 3. Do not speed beacon your quality grinding setups. Don't speed beacon anything using quality modules. You will literally reduce your quality. You won't undo quality. You won't make something a lower quality than before, but you will prevent things from becoming higher quality. So bear that in mind. It's an easy one to miss. A lot of people have fallen afoul of it. People have made bug reports saying that their machines aren't generating higher quality items because they beaconed them to hell and entirely wiped out their ability to generate higher quality. But yeah, that is my Nauvis. The one last thing to look at is the Factoriopedia. So if you alt-click anything in the game, it opens the Factoriopedia, which you can then browse to just look at all kinds of things. Enemies, terrain types, items, recipes, all kinds of things. And it just tells you everything there is to know about something. You can click on any of the icons within it and find out about this. I found out everything that you can make in an assembling machine too. Here's a comprehensive list of everything you can make. Let's have a look at rockets. They're used to make explosive rockets. We can look at, like, the character even. What the character can handcraft. Let's go for... I want to go for... sulfur. Here we go. So we can see... For something like sulfur, we can see... Okay, it's made from water and petroleum. There's an alternate recipe. Biosulfur. It's got a separate page. There's another alternate recipe, advanced carbonic asteroid crushing, that generates sulfur. So you can find every different way that this item is made, and you can find everything that it's used for. You can find out that you can gather it from chimney vents on Vulcanus. And you can find out, I think, it doesn't tell you that this is on Vulcanus. They're missing that. They should tell you what planet this is on, but it's obvious. You can tell. You know that sulfur can be made in a chemical plant or in a cryo plant. You know that it can be used for coal synthesis. You can take a look at that. That's used to make coal. Coal appears on Nauvis or Vulcanus. You can also get it from huge rocks. It's burned in these various items. It's used in these various crafts. There's an alternate recipe, coal synthesis. That's how we got here. It can be mined by any of the mining drills. We can look at big mining drills. We can look at what they're made of. It's everything that you can make out of molten iron. This is an incredible resource. This is amazing. Yeah, so alt-click anything. Alt-click anything in the game and it's going to open this thing and give you some information about it. Possibly the exact information that you're looking for. It's even got animations for the creatures. Look at them trundle. You can even find out that Behemoth Biter spawns upon the spoilage of captive biter spawners. This is incredibly useful, and you need to, like, just don't forget that it exists, because there will be times when you need it. There's brilliant ways this is integrated as well. If we go to space, we click on one of these space routes, it opens the Factoriopedia page for this specific space route. Oh, huh? Damage? Ooh. Zeus took a hit. He lost a turret. Funnily enough, he's more at risk on the journey from Aquilo, the journey between Aquilo and the solar system edge, than he is on the way to the Shattered Planet because of the thruster shut-off. He's traveling between Aquilo and the solar system edge as fast as he safely can, perhaps slightly faster as evidenced, and so he's at a greater risk of collision with something on that route than he is on this route, because we slow way down so we have plenty of time to deal with things once we're actually on the route to the Shattered Planet. Fun little quirk of my ship. I need to find a way to slow it down just a little bit on the journey between Aquilo and Solar System Edge. Not too much, because we've got to get it there quick enough so the biter eggs don't decay. Oh, there aren't any. They probably decayed on the way. Sometimes timing goes wrong with things, and if this guy has to sit in orbit for a while, the eggs end up spoiling in an earlier part of the journey. Yeah, there's all their corpses. There's all the dead biters. But yes, you click on a space lane, it tells you about the space lane. It tells you where in the space lane you will encounter different kinds of asteroids, because throughout the route, various kinds of asteroids will gain and lose probability of showing up. So you can see here on the way to the Shattered Planet, huge Prometheum asteroids get more and more and more and more and more frequent until there are 714 of them a minute. Which is why I don't want to go all the way. You're not meant to go all the way. You do get a reprieve. They're merely 321 per minute if you actually arrive at the Shattered Planet and stop there. You get merely half of the insane amount of Prometheum asteroids coming for you in that case. But yeah, there are pages for all of the planets, information about those. Don't forget to check the tips and tricks, by the way. There's loads of tips and tricks about what to encounter on the planets as well, to give you a bit of information about what to do when you're there. Yeah, this is an incredible resource. Just a comprehensive summary of everything in the game that you can consult at any time. A fantastic feature that I had to make sure to mention before the end, because there is so much I haven't talked about, trust me. Like, I mean, we can go to the research, and maybe I'll spot something that stands out to me. It's like, oh yeah, this is new. I mean, there's now texts that activate when you do something. So when you craft a lab, you unlock red science packs. There's all kinds of things like that. When you first mine oil, when you first pump oil, you get all of the oil processing, the initial oil processing stuff, things like that. There's a lot that happens when you arrive on a planet. Like a lot of things you unlock on Gleba, you unlock by crafting certain amounts of items. Harvesting items and so on. But yeah, there's elevated rails. We barely talked about that. There's a new tier of battery, by the way. There's now tier 3 suit batteries. That's cool. A lot of things have been rebalanced as well in terms of combat. You can eventually unlock the ability to build rail supports in lava and also in the Actually, maybe you can't build it in lava. It only says, it doesn't mention lava. Oh, maybe you can build normal rail supports in lava. But there's two kinds of oil ocean. You might have noticed the two different textures on Fulgora. You can only build the supports on one initially, so that you have to really plan out how you build your rails. Then when you unlock this tech, which you get from going to Vulcanus and Fulgora, you can then build the rail supports in both kinds of the oil ocean. I feel like everything that stands out in the text is covered, but there's so many quality of life things I haven't mentioned at all. Like the smart underground building is an incredible feature. You can now just run with underground belts and it will just build them however it needs to make them work. It just does that. You gotta try it. I didn't build like a setup to demonstrate it here, but literally just run along with some underground belts and build them, and when it would normally have encountered an issue and like stopped because it hit something, it then undoes the building and builds them further back so that it works. And you can just run along with underground belts and it will just make them fit in the space that you have. And the same goes for underground pipes. It's fantastic. And there's so much more quality of life, like super force place. If you hold down shift and control while placing a ghost of anything or a blueprint, it will place it no matter what. It will delete what is there and place what you want to place. So, before it was like shift to place even though some things won't place. Shift and control is place and make sure that thing places anyway. Just get rid of what's in the way and place what I want to place. It's an incredibly useful feature. Also, the icon instead of a ghost is an angry ghost, and that is perfection. But yeah, so many more things like that. So much I can't even go into. So much I won't even remember to go into. Wires are now buttons. You now just press a button to generate a wire. You don't have to craft an individual wire. So in remote view, you just click this button and wire two things together remotely. Remote view has so much more functionality. You can open like buildings in remote view. I've been doing that the whole thing. I don't even think about it anymore. It's incredible. It's incredible. I'm just so hyped about this. This is why I've been playing this non-stop since I got it, and not even making content, and why it's currently the night before release day, and I'm not going to get much sleep beforehand because I've got to finish making this video and uploading it and getting it ready for you to see. I can't stop playing Factorio. It's 10 times as addicting as it was before. It should come with a warning. It's made the game, like, Factorio was already an incredible game, and Space Age has just made it an infinitely more incredible game. I would never have played a save for 350 hours before. Now, I'm 350 hours in, and there's still so much to do. I'm 350 hours in, and I'm not done. There's things I've barely started on. I need to do better Prometheum harvesting. I need to overhaul my Vulcanus. I need to overhaul my Fulgora with all of the endgame techs that I now have. I need to scale things up. I need more. The factory must grow. I love this game. And I'm so happy that this DLC came, and I'm so happy that I got to be a part of the playtesting for it. And it's been a wild couple months, let me tell you. And 1 week from the upload date of this video, you can play this too. I don't know if I should say #ad. Probably, right? I don't know. Consider me biased, ultimately, but at the same time, this is a fantastic game. Thank you for coming on this tour. It ended up not being a whistle stop. It was a bit longer than I intended, but here we are. If you want to hop over to Twitch, I'm probably streaming right now if it's the day that you're watching. If you're watching this the day it came out, I'm probably streaming on Twitch right now. In fact, even if it isn't the day, I might be streaming on Twitch anyway, now that I can stream this. And you'll get an even more detailed tour, and you can ask me some questions that you might have about anything else, showing off features that I didn't think about or whatever. Getting into more detail about what everything does and all the things that you can do now. But that is about it for my Factorio 350-hour Space Age base tour. Expect more videos soon. Dangerous for me to say, I know, but still, I think you should. And I should say goodbye. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.